Chapter 8:13, Shao Yunduan's attitude. She's lying. One have never done anything of the sort. Madame Qiao vehemently denied the accusations. While she could acknowledge that a lineal mother might not hold affection for a concubine's daughter, she refused to accept responsibility for any attempt on Xiao Xian's life. County Magistrate Qiao found himself growing increasingly perplexed by his wife's words. He sensed that she was not lying, but Xiao Xian appeared resolute in her claims. He found himself torn between whom to believe. However, his growing aversion towards his wife was becoming undeniable. "Old master, I understand that I cannot alleviate your suspicions, and one won't defend myself any further. But Xiao Xian firmly believes that I have done this to her, and she will harbor resentment. She won't show us any respect, including you. She might even grow to hate you." Updated on B0x0ville. Calm County Magistrate Qiao's expression stiffened. He had no interest in her demeanor. He needed Shao Yunduan's stance. And Shao Yunduan had already made his position clear. County Magistrate Qiao couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. "It's all your fault." Madame Qiao lowered her head, concealing her inner sneer. She was well aware of the deep grudge Xiao Xian held against her. She had always believed that Xiao Xian was easily manipulated, and she had been confident in her ability to control her. Madame Qiao's anger grew as she realized that Xiao Xian had been deceiving her all along, putting up a facade. She felt a deep sense of betrayal and vowed to view Xiao Xian as her enemy from now on. "Old master, it seems that Xian has developed a deep-seated misunderstanding of me, and it will be difficult to dispel it. However, if Shao Yunduan continues to rise in his career..." County Magistrate Qiao let out an angry snort. His head throbbed with pain. Shao Yunduan had achieved the title of provincial champion, and it was not something that could be easily revoked. Attempting to remove his title could potentially ruin County Magistrate Qiao's own career. He dared not take such a risk. "I am his father-in-law. He wouldn't dare defy me unless he wants to jeopardize his own career. But he won't take your side ever. That's your fault. I have an idea. Would you like to hear it?" "Spill it out now." "Old master, what if we find a stunningly beautiful, talented, and charming young woman and present her to Shao Yunduan as a gift? Xiao Xian shouldn't be the only one standing by Shao Yunduan's side. If they could have a spy working for them close to Shao Yunduan, it would be a great advantage." Though it was despicable to manipulate someone to steal their own daughter's husband, the couple seemed to have no qualms about it. Officer Qiao was somewhat convinced. "Where can we find such a person? I can tell that Shao Yunduan is not attracted to ordinary women. If they could find a girl who possessed both gentleness and beauty, along with talent, scholars like Shao Yunduan would find it hard to resist such charms." People in power often sought to have beautiful women by their side to enhance their image and status. Madame Qiao smirked. "If you trust me, I can take care of that." Officer Qiao had no other choice but to rely on her. He gave a cautious glance to Madame Qiao and whispered, "Keep this a secret. No one, including Wei and concubine Du, should be aware of our plans." Chapter 8:14, Trap again. "Of course, old master. Please don't worry. He didn't consider it to be his fault. This stubborn girl had left him with no choice but to devise this plan. Fortunately, the girl wouldn't be adversely affected since her only task was to confront a concubine. Once she realized her mistake and turned to him, begging for forgiveness, he could then step forward and assume the role of her father. County Magistrate Qiao found solace in this thought, feeling slightly relieved. Updated on B0x0ville. Calm. He simply couldn't bear to give up on a promising son-in-law like Shao Yunduan, even if it meant causing his daughter some trouble. County Magistrate Qiao's determination was unwavering, so he turned to Madame Qiao and inquired, "Where do you propose we find a girl suitable for this task?" Madame Qiao smiled, responding, "It won't be difficult. With sufficient funds we can easily find someone suitable. There should be eligible candidates within the province, and I can arrange for a girl to be transferred from elsewhere if necessary." That increased County Magistrate Qiao's confidence even further. He nodded firmly in agreement. Good. They had ample funds for this. Madame Qiao wasted no time in formulating the plan. She intended to seek assistance from Ms.Mi Jr., certain that she would be willing to help. Second, Mrs. Yuezheng possessed the means to make it happen effortlessly. She would even attempt to persuade Ms.Mi Jr. to avoid shouldering any expenses herself. However, second Mrs. Yuezheng decided not to disclose this to her old master, as she could secure a portion of money from him as her personal savings. As they left the mansion, Shao Yunduan called out to his wife, his face filled with sadness. Xiao Xian's heart warmed, and she gently placed her fingers on his lips, smiling. "Darling, Please don't make me out to be so pitiful. I don't want to hear any of that. It's all in the past. Furthermore, she hadn't suffered any harm. It was the original host who had endured it all, and she didn't deserve their sympathy. Shao Yunduan smiled, appreciating his wife's open-mindedness. Okay, let's not dwell on it, he nodded, speaking softly. It's all behind us now, and it will never happen again. Yes, unless you treat me the same way, she teased playfully. Don't. I promise I won't treat you like that, Shao Yunduan interjected, gently covering her lips with his fingers. Oh, I will only treat you well. Xiao Xian gazed up at her husband, noticing the slight redness in his ears, a sign of his guilt. He avoided her gaze, pretending everything was normal. A bright smile graced Xiao Xian's face. One know you're the best. Shao Yunduan responded softly, his cheeks flushing with a thin layer of redness. His handsome face revealed his touched emotions. As the sound of joyful laughter reached Shao Yunduan's ears, he felt a tinge of shyness. His wife's laughter indicated that she genuinely didn't mind what had happened before. Are you heading to the land agent? Xiao Xian asked. Of course. Shao Yunduan replied. Nothing would deter them, not even Officer Qiao and his wife. Let's go then. Together, the couple made their way to the land agent, clearly communicating their requirements. The land agent assured them confidently that he would ensure a smooth process. They instructed him to visit the village in 3 days' time. Only foolish individuals would pass up the opportunity to work for a generous provincial champion. Afterward, the couple paid a visit to Manager Qin at Mingren Tang and engaged in a brief conversation. They requested that Manager Qin gather the ripe medicinal herbs the following afternoon, and Manager Qin agreed to their request. Chapter 8:15. Going home, Manager Qin inspected the ginseng and was impressed by their high quality. He also noticed some Panax noto ginseng which should be harvested next year. The potential earnings from these herbs amounted to approximately 10,000 liang. Manager Qin attempted to persuade them to expand their operation, and Xiao Xian agreed in principle. However, they faced a challenge as they lacked additional staff to facilitate such an expansion. Furthermore, their plans to visit the capital in spring caused them to hesitate in scaling up their business. Manager Qin found this situation quite regrettable. After bidding farewell to Manager Qin, they proceeded to purchase meat. Xiao Xian intended to cook dinner in the evening. Updated on B0X and 0vil.com, they wanted to have a small celebration following their encounter with Officer Qiao. It called for a special occasion. Fortunately, they managed to acquire beef. Beef was both expensive and rare in the market, making it a highly sought-after meat. Several restaurants had already purchased half of the stock, but Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan were fortunate enough to arrive early at the stall. Otherwise, they would have been left with nothing. Since beef could be stored for a few days without spoiling, Xiao Shersan bought over 15 kilograms of meat, including sirloin, brisket, tendon, and breast. We have various spices at home. The tendon meat can be used for stew, the beef brisket and breast can be braised in brown sauce or stewed with radishes and tomatoes, and the sirloin can be enjoyed in a hot pot or stir-fried. Let's have a beef hot pot tonight. And why not make some beef balls as well? They decided to proceed to thinly slice the beef, preparing it for the hot pot by blanching it in a spicy or clear soup for a few seconds. The result would be tender and flavorful meat that would make anyone's mouth water. As for the beef balls, they had a delightful bouncy texture with a smooth consistency. These chewy delicacies were perfect for the hot pot, adding to the anticipation of the meal. The mere thought of the flavorsome feast caused their mouths to water with anticipation. Shao Yunduan wholeheartedly agreed with Xiao Xian's excited suggestion, as they hadn't enjoyed hot pot in a while and were truly craving it. They also purchased a few pork bones and a piece of plum blossom meat. The pork bones were boiled to create a flavorful soup base for the hot pot. They chopped the plum blossom meat, mixed it with lotus root paste, shaped it into lotus root balls, fried them in a pan, and planned to serve them alongside the hot pot. Considering their dinner plans, they decided to postpone their visit to Zhang village. They could make the trip in a few days' time. Back at home, Yang Xiaoni, Shao Sanlang, Tao Tao, and Qi were all thrilled to hear about the hot pot dinner. They eagerly got busy with preparations, adding to the excitement and anticipation in the household. Preparing the beef balls required beating the beef into a meat paste, a task that demanded arm strength and endurance. Although they had done it before, this time it was Qi's responsibility. Interestingly, Shao Sanlang volunteered to take on the task, assuming he could handle the physical demands. However, he quickly grew exhausted, unable to lift his arms. Qi couldn't help but laugh at his brother's predicament and effortlessly completed the job, surprising everyone present. Poor Shao Sanlang, he even trembled as he tried to pick up food with his chopsticks during dinner. He didn't make any further offers to help, unable to tolerate his shivering arms while attempting to eat. The hot pot dinner featured a wide array of dishes. There were beef balls, lotus root balls, fish balls, beef slices, squid, shrimp paste, egg dumplings, vermicelli, yuba, fried bean curd, shiitake mushrooms, lettuce slices, wintermelon slices, yam slices, lettuce, wolfberry sprouts, and more. Additionally, they had fresh fire dragon fruits, oranges, and grapes. The tender and delicious beef brought immense joy as they savored this rare and delightful dinner together. Chapter 8:16. Compensation. The following day, with the assistance of Chunyu and the maids, the plant harvesting was swiftly completed within half a day. In the afternoon, Manager Qin personally arrived to collect the medicinal materials. As he didn't have sufficient cash on hand, he had to arrange for the funds from the province. To acknowledge his debt, he wrote an IOU note for Qiao Xian. Qiao Xian happily accepted the note, showing no concern over the matter. This marked Manager Qin's first visit to Qiao Xian's garden, and as he walked through, he couldn't help but be astonished and feel a tinge of envy. He couldn't help but praise what he witnessed, noting the abundance of snow fungus, sugarcane, pineapples, papayas, grapes, pears, lemons, pomegranates, and various other fruits. He even emphasized his desire for a few more bergamots and expressed his anticipation for the upcoming harvest season. Qiao Xian responded cheerfully, feeling a hint of guilt. She realized she had forgotten to share fruits with Manager Qin during her last visit to town. Updated on B0X and 0.com, they had hired 10 individuals to work on opening up the 20 mu of barren land. Each worker received a daily wage of 35 won. Opening up the barren land was no easy task. Firstly, they had to clear away all the weeds, shrubs, and miscellaneous trees that occupied the area. Most importantly, the roots of these trees and shrubs needed to be eradicated, which proved to be a challenging endeavor. The area was thoroughly cleaned before they began the process of opening up the land. Fortunately, it wasn't a busy farming season, so Qiao Xian and her family were content to follow the lead rather than feeling rushed. It became apparent that the initial 20 mu of land was not sufficient for their purposes. The lipstick business couldn't remain a secret, so they decided to increase production, along with the cultivation of cassavas. Qiao Xian estimated that 500 mu would be an appropriate size, as exceeding that would exceed her management capabilities. The additional fields would be connected to the existing floral fields, allowing for better management on a larger scale. With 200 mu already assigned to others, the remaining 500 mu would significantly enrich their land. Qiao Xian sought the company of her mother-in-law and gathered 16 families together to discuss the acquisition of the land, with assistance from the land officer. It was a small-scale meeting regarding land acquisition compensation. The field itself held little monetary value, and the individual harvests would be limited. By working together, they could ensure a more substantial yield. Qiao Xian didn't say much during the meeting, but she expressed her intentions to the villagers. She desired their land and planned to provide them with abundant compensation in return. At present, the market value for 1 mu of good land stood at 4 liang, while hills and steep terrain were priced at 3 liang. Well-opened land in mu was valued at 5 liang, and excellent land commanded a price of 6 liang. However, the majority of the available lands had already been opened, with only 20 to 30 mu remaining unopened. Therefore, Qiao Xian decided to purchase these lands at the cost of well-opened land, offering 12 liang for 1 mu. The villagers were left astounded by this proposition. What? How much? 12 liang for 1 mu? Did I hear that correctly? No, number one also heard it was 12 liang. Is she joking? That's unbelievable. Even well-opened land was not valued this highly. As the confirmation from Qiao Xian resounded through the crowd, the villagers erupted in excitement. Of course, they were more than willing to offer their land. Only foolish individuals would pass up such an opportunity. With 12 liang for 1 mu, they could use the money to purchase unopened land themselves. Chapter 8:17. Money. They could invest some effort in digging the land, which wouldn't affect future plantings. Even though the soil would regenerate after 2 or 3 years, resulting in an abundance of weeds and wild plants, it didn't matter much. Clearing out the weeds and unwanted growth would suffice. It was simply a matter of putting in some hard work. After 3 years, the land would be ready for sale. By selling the land, they could earn 8 liang for 1 mu, or 80 liang for 10 mu. Those with 20 liang could potentially earn 100 or even 200 mu of land. This was an incredible opportunity to seize within just 2 or 3 years. Some families grew anxious, eager to sell their land. They didn't want to miss out on the opportunity in case Chao Xian changed her mind before they had a chance to voice their intentions. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiaomicronim. A few astute families inquired, Ms. Fang and Ms. Niece-in-law, what are your plans for buying all this land? Are you aiming to make a fortune? The others were equally curious. Yes, what's the plan? Tell us more about it. Chao Xian smiled warmly. We're buying the land for our livelihood, of course. We don't squander money. Our goal is to connect the lands together for easier management. If any of you want to sell your land, please go ahead. If not, we can also acquire land from elsewhere. Operating them separately won't be a major issue. How we conduct the business is a secret. Even if we were to reveal our plans to you, it wouldn't guarantee your fortune. I'll offer a high price because we are all fellow villagers. It's a form of compensation. There's no need to rush. Take 2 days to think it over and then give me your decision. But remember, the offer is only valid for 2 days, Chao Xian emphasized. You can choose to sell now, but once the deal is done, there's no turning back. We don't want any complications that could hinder our project's progress, she cautioned. After Chao Xian's speech, people started engaging in lively discussions. 7 or 8 families made the deal on the spot, while others mentioned they would discuss it within their own families and provide an answer the following day. Chao Xian agreed happily to their approach. The families who reached an agreement with Chao Xian proceeded to write up the contracts, received their payments and returned home with smiles on their faces. One family, for example, sold 23 mu of land, with 6 of them being unopened. They earned a total of 276 liang. With the ability to purchase 20 mu of unopened land for 80 liang, they could make a pure profit of 200 liang. This significant increase in income would greatly improve their quality of life. The sight of money exchanging hands excited the others, leading 4 more families to sell their land. However, there were still some villagers who remained hesitant. They expressed their intention to make a decision after a few days. Chao Xian reassured them that it was perfectly fine. After finalizing the deals, Chao Xian returned home with Ms. Fang, clutching the contracts in her hands. Ms. Fang couldn't help but express her frustration, saying, "Why are they hesitating? It's so annoying and troublesome. We don't engage in deceit, especially when it comes to money. We're buying these fields to make a fortune, something they can't even dream of achieving. And there's nothing they can do about it either." Chapter 8:18, Rights of Choice. Chao Xian smiled and replied, "Let them take their time to think it over. It's only a couple of days. And not one to wait around either. Besides, they wouldn't figure out a better means of making a living anyway." Fang chuckled and agreed, saying, "That's very true." Deep down, she knew that her daughter-in-law had bought the land to cultivate flowers and trees, keep bees, and continue producing lipsticks. She had no intention of letting others in on her secret. They couldn't possibly replicate the lipstick-making process. It was time for them to stop dreaming. With the earnings from the land sales, they could build a new house and acquire additional fields for storage purposes. Everything would turn out well. What was the use of prying into Chao Xian's plans for the money? Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiaomicronim. Everyone agreed that nothing in the world came for free. Chao Xian was offering such a high price not because the buyers were fellow villagers, but because there must be a more significant fortune behind her actions. They couldn't afford to miss out on such an opportunity. And they were right. Chao Xian wasn't simply giving away money. She was genuinely trying to help the villagers, and her flower and lipstick business would easily recoup the investment. She didn't mind spending that much for their benefit. The choice was simple and clear-cut. It was up to each individual to determine whether they found it worthwhile. If they believed they had the means to sell the land at a higher price on their own and felt confident about their fortune, they were free to do so. They didn't need to concern themselves with what others were doing. Their main objective was to earn money, wasn't it? On the other hand, if they didn't think selling the land would fetch them a substantial sum, they could choose to forego the opportunity. Ultimately, the decision was theirs to make. Those who had their own ideas refrained from prying into the matter with the first group of families. They understood that they wouldn't gain any information from them, so they approached other families instead. They believed that those families might have some knowledge about the situation. However, to their surprise, neither of the other families knew anything about the first group of families purchasing land. They were equally perplexed as to why the land was bought from outsiders rather than within their own families. "No, I must speak with them." Ms.Mi was unable to tolerate the situation and was ready to confront the first group of families instead of entertaining questions from outsiders. However, Ms. Yan immediately intervened and stopped her. With a smile, she dismissed those who were prying, saying, "Mom, one don't think we need to delve into this matter. They purchased fields that are adjacent to their own. Since our fields are not available, they didn't approach us. That must be the reason why they excluded us. But Ms.Mi was not convinced by this explanation. She added, "I don't care. They bought fields and that's all there is to it. I'm starting to believe that they deliberately avoided buying our fields." Confused by her mother-in-law's widened eyes, Ms.Mi let out a perplexed sound. "What?" Ms.Mi continued, "Do you think they refused to buy our fields so that they could acquire the ones that are interconnected?" Chapter 8:19. Reasoning Ms.Mi. "Honestly," Ms.Mi exclaimed, "why do they have to buy connected fields? Can't they just buy separate ones? I must reason with them." Seeing that some families earned hundreds of liang by selling their fields, with some even earning 200 liang, Ms.Mi couldn't help but feel jealous and bitter. "Mom?" Ms.Mi inwardly complained and intervened, stopping her. "Mom, the first group of families has their own reasons for buying connected fields, and that's their business. Even if you try to talk to them, they won't change their minds, right? Elder aunt and fifth sister-in-law are both independent-minded individuals. They don't easily alter their decisions. Don't ruin the improved relationship between us. Update on Biomicron X0 VL. Siomicronim, it's simply not worth it, is it?" Ms.Mi stiffened, contemplating her daughter-in-law's words. She didn't care much about the improved relationship, which didn't concern her as much. However, one thing Ms.Mi said struck a chord in her mind. Ms. Fang and Xiao Xian were both strong-willed individuals who never swayed in their beliefs. Ms.Mi couldn't convince Ms. Fang or out-argue her. It would only lead to her own frustration. Never mind. Ms.Mi suddenly felt annoyed. They'll let it go. They should be grateful that I'm not causing them any trouble. Ms.Mi still felt a lingering irritation as if she had lost something significant. Ms. Yan's lips twitched, silently relieved that she had managed to stop her. That was a close call. To appease Ms.Mi, Ms. Yan expressed her respect and admiration, even offering her some of her own savings. This gesture made Ms.Mi beam with delight, thanking Ms. Yan for her profound respect. Ms. Yan couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction upon hearing those words. She had accumulated a substantial amount of private savings, earning dozens of liang each month. Giving a portion of it to her mother-in-law was well within her means. Just as Ms.Mi was being pampered, Ms.Mi arrived. Ms.Mi shared the same idea as Ms.Mi, intending to rally her support and confront the first group of families together. Ms. Yan inwardly cursed. Her third aunt-in-law was truly wicked. She could create a commotion all by herself and then drag her mother-in-law into it. She never did anything beneficial for Ms.Mi either. However, before Ms. Yan could say anything, Ms.Mi declined the offer, refusing to participate. Ms.Mi had just received money from Ms. Yan, and she couldn't directly humiliate her daughter-in-law. Instead, she informed Ms.Mi that she would pass on the opportunity. Ms.Mi was utterly surprised. This amounted to hundreds of liang. She was about to persist in her persuasion when Ms. Yan deflected the conversation, diverting Ms.Mi's attention elsewhere. Annoyed, Ms.Mi cursed at Ms. Yan and branded Ms.Mi as a coward. Fine, she would go and reason with them herself. The outcome was entirely predictable. Returning home, Ms.Mi felt even more irritated. She firmly believed that the first group of families was buying others' fields to avoid sharing profits with them. Shao Lulang furrowed his brow, expressing disdain. "Mom, stop engaging with them. Why bother getting close to the first group of families? Don't worry, Mom, it'll surpass Shao Yunduan, I guarantee it. Remember, never approach the first group of families again." "What?" Ms.Mi was about to defend herself, but Shao Lulang's cold and impatient expression startled her. Okay, Lulang, whatever you say." Chapter 8:20. Money-making Shao Lulang retreated to his room, his impatience dissipating. Ms.Mi let out a sigh of relief. She noticed that her son had become increasingly irritable lately, always wearing a cold expression. She dared not provoke him or defy his words. But she also observed that he seemed more motivated and dedicated than before. Perhaps it was because he had been working so hard that he was too exhausted to maintain a cheerful demeanor. Update on Biomicron X0 VL. Siomicron she had advised him not to overwork himself and to take some time to relax. However, he ignored her and told her to stop nagging. So she refrained from saying anything further. Her only wish was for him to achieve success as a cultivated talent in the future. Visitors frequently approached the first group of families in the Shao family, offering to sell their fields. Only foolish individuals would reject such a lucrative deal or hesitate to sell their fields. It was an expedient way to earn money. Who would refuse such an opportunity? Even the neighboring villagers grew curious. Some couldn't help but feel envious that they were unable to sell their own fields. Of course there were exceptions. Two families owning a total of 30 mu deliberated and ultimately declined to sell their fields. They were convinced that the first group of families in the Shao family possessed inside information that allowed them to purchase seemingly worthless fields at such a high price. But they viewed the first group as deceitful and self-centered, unwilling to share their knowledge with others. Determined to take a risk, they chose to retain their fields. They believed that they might soon sell them for thousands of liang, earning many times more than they could currently. Not only did they decide not to sell their fields, but they also attempted to convince others to follow suit. They sought to form a united front and pressure the Shao family into revealing the true value of the fields. However, all the other families unequivocally rejected their proposition. They had no hesitation in doing so. Those families were not in dire need of such a large sum of money, unlike the less fortunate families. To them, earning 100 or 200 liang was already a substantial amount. As for any peculiar or supernatural aspects related to the fields, well, if they could make money from it, it would be attributed to the good fortune and talent of Shao Yunduan, the provincial champion. If they were able to generate wealth from these circumstances, it would be considered their good luck and they would deserve it. By selling their fields, they aimed to avoid succumbing to greed. 100 or 200 liang would already bring significant improvements to their families' lives. The villagers who couldn't sell their fields couldn't help but feel envious of those who did. Why sell the fields? Only foolish people would sell. The two foolish families felt irritated upon hearing those remarks. They whispered among themselves, "Let them make their profits. But they will surely regret it. Yes, something must be amiss. Let's hold on to the fields and make our own fortune." The two families made up their minds to retain their fields and follow the Shao family's example by pursuing the same business venture. Qiao Xian did not pressure them to sell if they didn't want to. After 2 days, even if they changed their minds and wished to sell, she wouldn't purchase their fields. She wasn't desperate for more fields, but she couldn't go back on her word. Qiao Xian made the decision to acquire an additional 520 mu of land to connect with the existing ones, bringing the total to 600 mu. Chapter 821. Feeling of disappointment. They could easily bypass the 30 mu of land. Without it, they could purchase several dozen more mu to open up new fields. The land agents swiftly arrived and handled all the necessary arrangements. Qiao Xian wasted no time in hiring 40 workers, and the project commenced promptly. The vast expanse of over 300 mu was a neglected wasteland, overrun with weeds, shrubs, and various trees. The first task at hand was to clear the ground. However, Qiao Xian specifically instructed the workers not to remove the well-preserved large trees scattered throughout the area. These trees added a unique and picturesque touch to the landscape and provided much-needed shade for rest breaks when the workers grew tired. All the land was now connected into a single plot, requiring resegmentation. Some areas needed filling, while others needed excavation and leveling. A network of small roads needed to be crisscrossed, with accompanying ditches along the way. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiomicron M. It was indeed a monumental undertaking. Fortunately, it was late autumn and early winter, and the crops from the surrounding fields had already been harvested. This spared them the task of clearing away any vegetation, allowing them to focus on working with the natural terrain. Those who had sold their land wasted no time in using their earnings to purchase new plots of land. The newly acquired land was situated a bit farther from the home village, but the satisfaction of having money in their pockets and new land outweighed any inconvenience. The entire family eagerly ventured out to open up the fields, excited about the prospects it held for the coming spring. No one felt left out, as they all had a role to play in this busy endeavor. The two families who had chosen not to sell their fields couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness in their hearts as they observed the Shao family and other families enthusiastically exploring new lands. Subconsciously, they began to harbor suspicions that the first section of the Shao family had some ulterior motive for their fields, perhaps hoping they would come begging to sell. Yet, Qiao Xian remained true to her word and did not approach them with any offers or inquiries. This surprised and somewhat irritated them. They resorted to spreading rumors, suggesting that the Shao family intended to make a fortune from the fields they had purchased, causing those who had bought the land to regret their decision deeply. Whispered conversations and gossip circulated, casting negative shadows on the Shao family's intentions. Some even shared these tales with Ms. Fang and Qiao Xian. Ms. Fang responded with a scornful sneer, paying no mind to the rumors. Qiao Xian, on the other hand, simply smiled. Those people truly failed to grasp her genuine concern for the well-being of the villagers. It seemed they were adept at creating false narratives and misunderstandings. The majority of the villagers had a clear understanding of the situation. They had received their money by selling their fields to the Shao family. Meanwhile, the two families who had attempted to imitate the Shao family's business model were taken aback when they witnessed Xiao Xian cultivating roses, Chinese roses, pomegranates, osmanthus, lemons and other flowers, along with a small portion dedicated to cassavas. It dawned on them that Xiao Xian was producing ingredients for making lipsticks. This revelation left them in a state of shock because, despite their efforts, they couldn't manage to produce lipsticks themselves. Filled with deep regret, they implored the elderly members of their families to plead with the Shao family to sell the fields back to them. However, Xiao Xian politely declined their request. She no longer required such a large amount of land for her endeavors. Chapter 822. Popular Qi. Since Xiao Xian no longer needed the fields, it would be unfair to force the buyers to sell them back. This realization left the two families seething with anger, and the two arrogant men in charge became the subject of ridicule and jokes in the village. As the fields underwent development, Xiao Dalong and Ms. Fang would frequently visit and inspect them. Meanwhile, Xiao Xian, Qi and Tao Tao ventured back into the mountains. Xiao Xian still had plans for the valuable tea seeds that were needed to fill the vacant area in Zhang village. She intended to start cultivating the seeds after the new year, allowing them to be transplanted around March. Recalling the abundance of wild lemons in the mountains, Xiao Xian decided to dig them up, stimulate the roots by breaking the branches, and temporarily cultivate them in the garden. In early spring they could be transplanted to orchards on the outskirts of the province. The lemons and their juice were essential for enhancing the flavors of the drinks served at the dessert stores. Xiao Xian aimed to have at least 30 or 40 mu of lemon orchards. Update on Biomicron X0VL. Xiomicron M. Furthermore, this season marked the return of plump wild animals in the mountains, accompanied by a variety of wild fruits. It was the perfect time to venture into the mountains and gather resources. Qi's hunting skills had improved, and he had grown stronger with a sharper sense, leading to a bountiful harvest for their family. Pheasants, hares, deer, muntjac, grouse and wild pigeons which Xiao Xian enjoyed, were harvested almost daily. Although it was more convenient to store the meat during this season, there was still an excess that needed to be addressed, prompting the family to resume making smoked meat. During their hunts, they even encountered wild deer, and Qi managed to bring back 3 fully grown deer to the village, causing jealousy among the villagers. Wild boars were also hunted, as their meat was perfect for smoking. In addition to the game from the mountains, Xiao Xian and her family also acquired many large smoked fish. Their stockpile of smoked meat from the previous year had lasted for almost half a year, attesting to its delicious taste. Whether it was steamed, fried, stewed, made into claypot rice, or used as fillings for other dishes, the flavors were exceptional. The anticipation for the next hunting season grew within the family, keeping them busy with preparations. Meanwhile, the villagers couldn't help but feel envious of Qi's hunting abilities, making him quite popular among them. People from their own village, neighboring villages, and even distant areas approached Ms. Fang and eldest uncle, expressing their interest in arranging marriages for Qi. Some individuals were also interested in Tao Tao. Ms. Fang felt a mix of pride and helplessness in response to the attention Qi and Tao Tao received. She cautioned eldest uncle not to make any promises regarding their marriages at this time. Eldest uncle's expression turned serious as he responded, "It's a matter of great importance and I don't take such promises lightly. We must approach it with caution and thoroughness." Ms. Fang rolled her eyes and scoffed, "I have my doubts. You tend to change your mind too easily, and I wouldn't put it past you to make promises just to save face." Eldest uncle was displeased by her remark. "That's not true. I'm not that foolish." However, he nearly made a mistake soon after. Ms. Fang approached Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian, seeking their assistance in arranging marriages for Qi and Tao Tao. The dynamics had shifted. Shao Yunduan's success and Xiao Xian being County Magistrate Xiao's daughter, along with their profitable land purchases, had attracted the attention of many villagers. Chapter 823. Dragon Fruits and Papaya Seeds. So, those who sought to form a martial alliance might have ulterior motives. What if they targeted the wrong individuals and deceived them into making promises? This could potentially bring trouble to Qi and Tao Tao in the future, putting the entire family at risk. Ms. Fang was determined not to let this happen. The family was thriving and her sons and daughters-in-law were all doing well. The peace and harmony within the family were invaluable. Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan wholeheartedly agreed to assist in the matter. "Mom, don't worry. My wife and one will ensure that everything goes smoothly. When it comes to Qi and Tao Tao's marriages, we want focus solely on family background. What truly matters is the character of the individuals, Shao Yunduan reassured. Miss Fang smiled and sighed with relief. You're absolutely right. Just look at your third sister-in-law. Her family may not have been well off, but she has thrived after marrying into our family. That's what truly counts. Qi and Tao Tao don't need partners who are highly successful, but they must be reliable and not cause any trouble. Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan felt a hint of embarrassment. Xiao Xian chuckled. Niam, it's not that simple. We can't just settle for anyone for Qi and Tao Tao. We will handle this matter carefully and make sure to find the best matches for them. If someone proposes a marriage now, we will decline. What do you think about waiting until after my husband's spring examination? That way, we'll have enough time to thoroughly evaluate and gather information, suggested Xiao Xian. Ms. Fang was pleased to hear this proposal and nodded in agreement. They shouldn't rush to find suitors now. What if Shao Yunduan becomes the advanced scholar and starts working in the governmental office? Qi and Tao Tao would have a much broader selection of potential partners then. Chu Shan arrived with a group of people from the province. Yuezheng Shao's letter informed them that they had obtained many dragon fruits and papaya seeds. Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan were invited to visit them and collaborate on this project. Xiao Xian was delighted by the news and made up her mind to visit them. She intended to use her superpower to ensure the safekeeping of the seeds throughout the winter. Concerned for her safety, Shao Yunduan decided to accompany her on the journey. Xiao Xian carefully selected some distinctive fruits from the garden. Although they no longer had pineapples or sugar canes, she gathered a few bananas, dragon fruits, and papayas. The bergamot trees were thriving, producing large and fragrant fruits. They collected a total of 12 bergamots. 6 of them would go to the Xie family, and the remaining 6 to the Yuezheng family. They also obtained fresh ginseng. Coincidentally, Qi had returned from hunting with 2 roe deer and several pheasants. They decided to bring both roe deer and selected 8 pheasants and 8 hares each. They also packed 4 bottles of homemade mushroom sauce, tomato sauce, sesame oil, red oil pickles, and chili sauce. However, they decided to leave behind the unfinished smoked meat. The wagons were now filled with these provisions. Xiao Xian also successfully saved the silver ink orchids from the Yuezheng family. She placed 2 seeds in her special space and planned to bring the original one to the Xie family. Once everything was arranged, they set off with Chu Shan. As good friends, Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan didn't hide anything from Chu Shan. They openly discussed their concerns. Xiao Xian inquired about the situation with Yuezheng Ting. It was an event that couldn't be concealed. Numerous people had witnessed or heard about it, and no one could erase that memory. Chapter 824. Future Chu Shan was filled with excitement when he was asked about the situation. Instead of merely expressing his excitement, he began to mock and ridicule the second section of the family. The strained relationship between the 2 sections had always been evident, with Ms.Mi Jr. frequently bullying Chu Shan and the servants. Therefore, when the second section of the family encountered trouble, Chu Shan eagerly seized the opportunity to mock them. In light of these circumstances, Chu Shan and the others became more inclined to align themselves with Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan. After Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan left the province, Madame Qiao, her daughter, and concubine Du also departed soon after. Subsequently, rumors about what had transpired involving Yuezheng Ting began to circulate. Although Qiao Wei was involved, very few people discussed it, and numerous versions of the rumors regarding Yuezheng Ting's situation emerged. Soon enough, her reputation plummeted to the lowest point, subjecting her to constant ridicule. Even some troublemakers resorted to creating vulgar jokes at her expense. Yuezheng Ting and Ms.Mi Jr. withdrew from public life for several days, and the servants were well aware of the situation but dared not speak of it to them. The second old master, who had been out, returned home in a fit of anger and confronted Ms.Mi Jr. He lashed out at Yuezheng Ting, blaming Ms.Mi Jr. for her inability to raise their daughter properly. In his rage, he even slapped Yuezheng Ting across the face. The mother and daughter were taken aback and overwhelmed with distress upon learning about the situation. They couldn't comprehend what had transpired and demanded an explanation. The recent events had left a deep scar in Yuezheng Ting's life, resembling a haunting nightmare. The news she heard from her father only intensified her anguish. Overwhelmed by shame, she instantly blushed and sought solace in Ms.Mi Jr.'s comforting embrace, avoiding any contact with others. She couldn't fathom her future anymore. She knew she would never be able to join her friends at their homes or on trips. Those who held grudges against her would surely revel in her misfortune and mock her mercilessly. The weight of her disgrace left her unable to face anyone ever again. Thoughts raced through her mind. What would Brother Xie think of her? Would he believe she was an utterly frivolous girl? No, that couldn't be true. The idea of marrying Xie Jingrong seemed unbearable as the thought of being looked down upon by him filled her with misery. Ms.Mi Jr. experienced a mix of embarrassment, surprise and fury, overwhelmed by the situation and its implications. Ms.Mi Jr. reached her breaking point, unable to tolerate the humiliation inflicted upon her by her own husband. Old Master, it must be the elder sister-in-law who orchestrated this scheme. The people from Lingyuan Temple vowed to keep the secret, and our servants are too afraid to speak up. It must be the elder sister-in-law's doing. She wants to humiliate us, to tarnish Ting's reputation. She must have paid people to spread the rumors. Old Master, we implore you to help us. Ting is being bullied and her prospects for marriage are now ruined. Marrying someone? The second Old Master scoffed. I'll consider us lucky that she isn't engaged. Otherwise, we would have faced even more embarrassment when the engagement fell apart. Ms.Mi Jr. sobbed even harder, expressing her grievances. It has to be the elder sister-in-law's doing. Otherwise, why would the rumor single out Ting and not mention elder Miss Chao, even though both are involved? It's clear as day. The elder sister-in-law has a close relationship with Chao Xian, so they shield elder Miss Chao from scrutiny. Infuriated, the second Old Master found himself believing Ms.Mi Jr.'s reasoning. It seemed logical to him given the circumstances. Chapter 825. Revenge. The couple approached Madame Yuezheng, seeking a fair resolution to their predicament. Upon hearing their plea, Madame Yuezheng was taken aback and nearly fainted. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Overwhelmed with disappointment, she directed her anger towards Ms.Mi, questioning her abilities as a mother. She expressed concerns about Yuezheng Ting's future and expressed her disappointment in their actions. Ms.Mi Jr., feeling deeply wounded, covered her face and wept. Madame Yuezheng, I am to blame. But please, I beg you to take care of Ting and ensure justice for her. Madame Yuezheng's expression grew stern. She ordered, bring first Madame here. While Ms.Mi Jr. and her daughter might have been mistaken in their accusations, First Madame should not have taken actions to harm them. She was determined not to let that slide. As Madame Yuezheng spoke, she started to grasp the situation unfolding before her. She remained calm even as Ms.Mi Jr. glared at her and continued to accuse her. With a dark tone, Madame Yuezheng replied, Elder son's wife, your accusations have gone too far. We are all part of the same family. By attempting to set me up, you tarnish our family's reputation. You are mistaken. First Madame responded quietly, Madame Yuezheng, do you have any evidence to support your claim? Accusing me without any grounds is highly improper, isn't it? Ms.Mi Jr. snapped, it's evident. You're seeking revenge on me. If you have a problem with me, come directly to me. Why involve Ting in your schemes? You certainly have a high opinion of yourself. First Madame sneered. She had always been irritated by Ms.Mi Jr.'s habit of complaining about her in front of Madame Yuezheng. With a hushed tone, she continued, if I ever wish to take revenge on you, I have countless methods at my disposal. And rest assured, one would ensure that you never discover it was me. As far as First Madame was concerned, her granddaughter was still too young to be concerned about her reputation. Moreover, the first and second sections of the family were distinct entities. Madame Yuezheng, as you have stated, we are all part of the Yuezheng family. While I may not have a daughter, my sons may have daughters in the future. There is no benefit for me in engaging in such actions. Second sister-in-law, you assume I am responsible for all this, but do not make baseless assumptions. Show me the evidence. Otherwise, if you dare accuse me of something I have not done, I will slap you in the face. You dare speak so boldly because you know I have no evidence. Ms.Mi Jr. trembled with anger. First Madame regarded her as if she were staring at a fool. So, in the end, you have no evidence, yet you dare spout nonsense and accuse me in front of Madame Yuezheng so audaciously? Ms.Mi Jr. Madame Yuezheng felt a deep annoyance, secretly calling Ms.Mi Jr. a foolish woman. It seemed that Ms.Mi Jr. had easily managed to irritate her, and she imagined that her elder son's wife was likely mocking her inwardly. Feeling embarrassed, Madame Yuezheng furrowed her brow in anger. This was precisely why she had never held a fondness for First Madame. Her daughter-in-law was excessively intimidating and imposing, showing no regard for the feelings of the elders or attempting to ingratiate herself with them. She could never warm up to a person like that. Before they could inquire further, First Madame calmly began to explain. Many people had witnessed the incident, and Yuezheng Ting had openly revealed everything. Therefore, concealing the incident was impossible. The fact that the news did not spread until several days later was already a stroke of luck. The Yuezheng family was renowned in the province, and any scandal involving a member of the family naturally attracted significant attention. Hence, people reveled in discussing the matter. As for elder Miss Xiao, no one even knew who she was, so there was barely any gossip surrounding her. Chapter 826. Reasonable. The increasing wealth of the Yuezheng family attracted both allies and rivals, creating opportunities for their competitors to ruin their reputation and spread vile jokes about the family. When such gossip was spread, it was clear that there was someone behind it. But what could they do? Rumors were always intangible and omnipresent. Even the immense wealth of the Yuezheng family couldn't suppress them completely. Furthermore, the more explanations were offered, the more amusing it became for outsiders. They would seize upon any opportunity to create even more absurd tales that portrayed the family in a negative light. If they didn't trust Madame Yuezheng's judgment, they could provide explanations, but it wouldn't change the situation. Madame Yuezheng and the others felt a sense of numbness upon hearing these words. It was painfully true. The second old master felt immense shame and shot a resentful glare at his wife. If it weren't for this woman, he wouldn't find himself in this situation. She had proven herself to be incompetent, limited to playing petty tricks at home. She couldn't even properly educate her own daughter. Ms.Mi Jr. remained infuriated and had no trust in a single word uttered by First Madam. She firmly believed that First Madam was merely attempting to argue and defend herself. Even if competitors were involved in orchestrating the situation, First Madam had to be implicated as well. First Madam added, "Suggest you publicly portray it as an accident." By labeling it as an accident, they would acknowledge the incident while redirecting the public's focus away from other possibilities. Indeed, most people would believe it was an accident. After all, a woman from the prestigious Yuezheng family could never be involved with unemployed individuals. It must have been Lady Yuezheng who had the misfortune. Nevertheless, her marriage prospects would undoubtedly be affected. True to form, Ms.Mi Jr. hastened to arrange potential marriage alliances for her daughter, hoping to prove that Yuezheng Ting still had promising suitors. However, those whom she had previously favored or disliked turned her down. Ms.Mi Jr. seethed with anger, cursing those individuals as simple-minded fools. First Madam was left speechless upon hearing this from Auntie Hua. The rumor continued to circulate, and Ms.Mi Jr.'s attempts to find a suitor seemed futile. No one would agree to it. She should have waited at least a couple of years before making such efforts. Perhaps, at least half a year later, right? Ms.Mi Jr. was completely oblivious to the concept of haste makes waste. She remained increasingly driven and motivated to push further. This infuriated and worried Madame Yuezheng. She sternly warned Ms.Mi Jr. not to subject herself to further humiliation. Feeling miserable, Ms.Mi Jr. cried. Her daughter was already 18 years old, and if they waited for a few more years, she would have no suitable suitors left. Time was of the essence, and her daughter couldn't afford to wait any longer. Madame Yuezheng's anger intensified. She criticized Ms.Mi Jr. for being irritating and for her failure to plan ahead. As the tearful Ms.Mi Jr. was dismissed, Madame Yuezheng massaged her temples and called for First Madam to discuss a plan. Reluctantly, Madame Yuezheng had to admit that her elder son's wife was more dependable, despite her personal dislike for her. First Madam swiftly offered her suggestion. The best solution would be to bring Yuezheng Ting back to their hometown to find a suitable suitor. Ms.Mi Jr. should not focus on the suitor's family background. Rather, integrity should be the most important factor to consider. Madame Yuezheng was taken aback by the suggestion. After a prolonged silence, she responded tersely, acknowledging that she understood, and then asked First Madam to leave. First Madam showed no objection and left without hesitation. However, Madame Yuezheng soon came to the realization that it was indeed the only way forward. Chapter 827. Back to Hometown U. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Yuezheng Ting was reaching an age where waiting for a suitable suitor was becoming increasingly difficult. The longer they waited, the fewer good prospects there would be available. However, given the scandal that had tarnished Yuezheng Ting's reputation in the province, it seemed impossible to find a suitable suitor for her there. Madame Yuezheng considered the option of looking for a suitor in their hometown, which was located at a considerable distance from the province. The Yuezheng family held a strong position in their hometown, and they could protect Yuezheng Ting when needed. Furthermore, the rumors would not reach that far. While the suitors from their hometown might not have as privileged backgrounds, there was still a chance for Yuezheng Ting to find a suitable partner there. Madame Yuezheng finally made the decision to pursue this path. However, Ms.Mi Jr. fiercely opposed this suggestion when she heard it. No, absolutely not. She refused to let her daughter return to the humble surroundings of their hometown to marry someone there. She believed it would ruin her daughter's life. Madame Yuezheng was furious. She cared for her granddaughter just as much and was not out to ruin her life. She was not an evil grandmother. Furthermore, Madame Yuezheng blamed Ms.Mi Jr. for failing to properly teach and guide her daughter, leading to the situation they were facing now. Ms.Mi Jr. remained determined and steadfast in her stance, adamantly refusing Madame Yuezheng's suggestion. She had changed, no longer displaying her previous sweetness and pretentiousness. She had a singular focus now: her daughters must marry someone in the province or even in more affluent regions. They were destined for a prosperous life, not to return to the countryside like their hometown. Their wealth was too great to be given to someone poor. Ms.Mi Jr. disregarded her previous behavior in front of her mother-in-law. The only thing she cared about now was ensuring her daughter would not marry someone beneath her, who would take advantage of her and her wealth. Madame Yuezheng was taken aback by Ms.Mi Jr.'s resolute rejection. She had never expected her beloved daughter-in-law, whom she had adored for so long, to be like this. It was a great shock to her, and she began to feel deeply disappointed. Furious at Ms.Mi Jr.'s refusal and her accusations of favoritism, Madame Yuezheng decided to drop the matter altogether. She was thoroughly disappointed in Ms.Mi Jr. She resolved not to impose any further requests on Yuezheng Ting or her. After all, Yuezheng Ting was not her own daughter but merely a granddaughter. It seemed that Yuezheng Ting had no interest in returning to their hometown either. From that moment on, Madame Yuezheng decided to change her treatment of Ms.Mi Jr. She no longer treated her with the same kindness and favor as before. Ms.Mi Jr. breathed a sigh of relief and began seeking potential suitors, even considering those from neighboring towns. However, her efforts yielded no positive results. The families interested in marrying Yuezheng Ting did not meet Ms.Mi Jr.'s standards. Just when they believed the situation would continue dragging on for an extended period, an unexpected event occurred, bringing about a turning point. Unfortunately, it was not a favorable turn of events. Yuezheng Ting's sister, Yuezheng Yan, who had been married for a while, caused trouble once again. Yuezheng Yan's husband relied heavily on the Yuezheng family for his business, and their family enjoyed wealth and numerous properties. However, this dependence and Yuezheng Yan's growing arrogance created a rift between her and her husband, driving them further apart. Yuezheng Yan strongly opposed her husband, Qi having a concubine. Just 2 months into their marriage, she forcefully dismissed the maid who had slept with her husband. Not stopping there, Yuezheng Yan replaced the other attractive maids with plain-looking and clumsy ones. She was not concerned about mistreating the maids she had purchased, and she would punish them severely if they dared to cross any boundaries. Qi Yuezheng Yan's husband, struggled with her controlling behavior. Initially, his mother explained that Yuezheng Yan's actions stemmed from her care and desire to keep him close. Although Qi did not appreciate it, he reluctantly accepted this explanation. Chapter 828, Yuezheng Ting's Sister Yu. Ted by BXN Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Yuezheng Yan had become increasingly tyrannical, believing that her husband's family should conform to her every whim and mood. Within just 6 months, she had managed to offend not only her husband's entire family but also their relatives. Despite their resentment, they dared not confront her due to her status as a member of the influential Yuezheng family. Although Yuezheng Yan was arrogant and overbearing, she had not engaged in any cruel or lethal acts, leading her husband's family to tolerate her behavior. However, Qi soon discovered something shocking. Yuezheng Yan had arranged marriages for his 2 serving maids with elderly, unattractive widowers from rural areas. She had gone to great lengths to find such matches. As a result, the 2 serving maids were subjected to a wretched existence. When Qi learned of their plight, one of the maids had already succumbed to the relentless torment, while the other had aged prematurely, bearing scars on her forehead and losing all her former beauty. Filled with horror and anguish, Qi immediately brought the surviving maid back home and placed her in a convent for her safety. Determined to uncover the truth, he confronted Yuezheng Yan about her actions. Yuezheng Yan insisted that she had found 2 excellent suitors for the serving maids and had generously provided them with a substantial sum of money to live a comfortable life. Qi, trusting his legal wife, believed that she had acted in their best interest. Unbeknownst to Qi Yuezheng Yan's intentions were far from noble. She was leading the maids down a path of despair and destruction. However, Yuezheng Yan showed no remorse. Instead, she began to create a tumultuous scene, accusing Qi of rekindling his relationship with the maids and questioning his love for her as his legal wife. She cried, shouted, and hurled vulgar insults at Qi Yun, even seeking support from her parents and Madame Yuezheng. Ms.Mi Jr. and Madame Yuezheng, being fond of Yuezheng Yan, became incensed upon hearing her side of the story. In the end, Qi Yun was compelled to apologize, bowing down to Yuezheng Yan's demands. Yuezheng Yan may have obtained her perceived justice, but she had lost the support and respect she once had from Qi Yun's family. Qi Yun eventually made the difficult decision to distance himself from Yuezheng Yan. Although she appeared to hold a position of authority within Qi Yun's family, the truth was that no one genuinely liked her or regarded her as a true family member. It was during this time that Yuezheng Yan discovered Qi Yun had a mistress who had even given birth to a son and a daughter. Overwhelmed by jealousy and rage, Yuezheng Yan assembled a group of her own men and stormed the mistress' residence with the intention of harming her and selling her children. Upon learning of the situation, Qi Yun rushed to the scene to intervene. Unfortunately, the children had already been sold to intermediaries, and his mistress had been subjected to a brutal beating, losing consciousness multiple times. Qi Yun's anger surged within him. He rescued his mistress and instructed his men to protect her while he set off to find and secure the safety of the children. Meanwhile, Yuezheng Yan's mental state deteriorated further. She wept uncontrollably and retreated to the solace of her own home. News of the shocking incident spread throughout the province, leaving no doubt that few would tolerate their husbands having mistresses. However, there was no support or sympathy to be found for Yuezheng Yan in the aftermath. The mistress' actions were undoubtedly immoral, but taking her life was not the solution. Teaching her a lesson and holding her accountable for her deeds would have been more appropriate. Yuezheng Yan's decision to sell her husband's children to an agent instead of bringing them home was truly horrifying and inhumane. Yuezheng Yan had never enjoyed a favorable reputation, and her behavior within her husband's family only added fuel to the rumors that circulated about her. She consistently disregarded the authority of the elder family members and imposed her will upon others. Additionally, her failure to bear any children and her blatant disregard for virtuous conduct only furthered her negative image. It was not surprising that her husband might consider leaving her, given the circumstances. Many sighed in resignation, accepting the situation as a natural consequence. When Ms.Mi Jr. heard about the rumors surrounding her daughter, she refused to believe them. Instead, she attributed the spread of such stories to jealousy from individuals who were envious of her daughter's prosperity and well-being. Chapter 829. Ms.Mi Jr. Getting Mental U. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicron prior to Yuezheng Ting's accident, the process of arranging her marriage was already facing obstacles, primarily due to her sister's behavior. Families who valued propriety and adherence to rules were hesitant to accept a daughter-in-law with such flaws. Only those who prioritized their own material gains were willing to overlook these concerns. The return of Yuezheng Yan to the family further enraged Ms.Mi Jr., leading her to curse at the Qi family. She felt that everything was going wrong and blamed the heavens for subjecting her daughters to such hardships. As First Madam and the Old Master held the authority, Ms.Mi Jr. was not allowed to execute her own plans based on personal interests. Therefore they took charge and addressed the matter. After years of enduring the situation, Qi Yun's parents and Qi Yun himself came to the Yuezheng family to expose Yuezheng Yan's actions in front of Madame Yuezheng, First Madam, Ms.Mi Jr. and her husband. Ultimately, they declared that Qi Yun intended to marry his mistress and insisted on bringing the children back home. They also prohibited Yuezheng Yan from interfering in the matter. If Yuezheng Yan objected to these terms, they were willing to grant a divorce. The Qi family would return the dowry and provide an additional 10,000 liang as compensation. Ms.Mi Jr. was pushed to the brink of a mental breakdown by these developments. Ms.Mi Jr. was furious at the audacity of the Qi family. She believed that the fault lay with her elder brother and elder sister-in-law, as they should have exerted pressure on the Qi family to prevent such behavior. While acknowledging that the Qi family did consider this aspect, the primary decision-makers within the family were known for their fairness in handling family matters. Despite the questionable actions of the Qi family, Yuezheng Yan found herself in an even worse predicament. Both Madame Yuezheng and the influential members of the family suggested pursuing a divorce. However, both Ms.Mi Jr. and Yuezheng Yan vehemently rejected this proposition. They refused to entertain the idea. Divorce was out of the question for them. Their underlying intention was to withhold any benefits from outsiders. Their determination only served to exacerbate the situation further. Yuezheng Yan returned to the Qi family and swore an oath to punish the mistress and her two children. However, Mrs. Qi had already taken the grandchildren under her care, and Qi Yun personally selected the servants for the mistress. Consequently, Yuezheng Yan's orders had no effect. Yuezheng Yan's maids and aunties were on the verge of physically assaulting the concubine when the concubine's servants intervened and reported the incident to Qi Yun. In response, Qi Yun issued severe punishments to the maids and aunties who had assisted Yuezheng Yan. No one dared to defend Yuezheng Yan anymore. Yuezheng Yan created a scene, behaving erratically. As a result, Qi Yun ordered her to be confined to the yard, prohibiting her from leaving its confines. Unbeknownst to Yuezheng Yan, once Qi Yun discovered her true nature, he began administering a medicinal soup after their intimate encounters to prevent her from becoming pregnant. Furthermore, Qi Yun developed strong negative feelings toward Yuezheng Yan and ceased any further physical intimacy with her. As a result, she remained childless throughout those years. Qi Yun preferred to have no legitimate children rather than allowing Yuezheng Yan to bear a child who would carry his bloodline. News of Yuezheng Yan's actions spread widely after the commotion at the Qi family. Curiously enough, it was the Qi family themselves who willingly propagated these stories whenever they were asked, demonstrating a surprising openness and lack of concern for their reputation. The entire town was both shocked and captivated by the scandalous gossip surrounding the Qi family. However, due to the tarnished reputation caused by Yuezheng Yan's actions, the prospects of finding a suitable suitor for Yuezheng Ting became extremely slim. Nevertheless, Ms.Mi Jr. remained resolute and unwavering in her determination. She refused to give up and tirelessly continued her search for a suitable match for Yuezheng Ting. She faced countless rejections and endured the mockery of people whispering behind her back. Madame Yuezheng could no longer bear witnessing Ms.Mi Jr.'s relentless pursuit. With a heavy heart, she confronted Ms.Mi Jr. Either Ms.Mi Jr. keeps Yuezheng Ting company back to the hometown so they could arrange a marriage deal, or she can dispatch one old auntie who keeps her company back to the hometown to arrange a marriage deal. Chapter 830 shocked you. Ted by BX in Zeroville. Siamicron either of the two options would be given to them. If Ms.Mi Jr. refused to make a choice, she would be presented with the second option. Ms.Mi Jr. appeared completely possessed, displaying a strong resistance to accepting the proposal. Her rebellion provoked Madame Yuezheng to a great extent. In response, the second old master delivered a swift slap across Ms.Mi Jr.'s face, finally silencing her. Reluctant to let Yuezheng Ting return to her hometown alone, Ms.Mi Jr. decided to accompany her. Madame Yuezheng assigned her trusted auntie and a few female maids to approach the clan leader and select a suitable suitor, disregarding Ms.Mi Jr.'s input due to her consistent disapproval. If a decision couldn't be reached, a letter would be sent to Madame Yuezheng, who planned to teach Ms.Mi Jr. a valuable lesson. Upon discovering Ms.Mi Jr.'s true nature, Madame Yuezheng realized she had been deceived all these years. She lost any desire to defend and protect Ms.Mi Jr. The embarrassment and anger she felt when recalling the situation were overwhelming, as it meant she had foolishly placed her trust in a deceitful daughter-in-law for so long. Regardless of Ms.Mi Jr. and Yuezheng Ting's thoughts, they were compelled to leave the province discreetly. They had no intention of returning for at least 6 months. The Yuezheng family paid no heed to the rumors circulating in town, and with time, they faded away along with Ms.Mi Jr.'s presence. Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan were left in shock upon hearing the story. It became evident that Ms.Mi Jr. was indeed an eccentric individual, and her daughter Yuezheng Ting was no different. The fact that both the mother and daughter were no longer in the province brought a sense of relief. There was no longer a need to be wary of their presence. Little did anyone know that Xiao Xian was the true instigator behind the events that transpired. However, it should be acknowledged that Yuezheng Ting had sparked the conflict initially. Xiao Xian's subsequent actions were merely a form of retaliation. It was a matter of tit for tat. Had Xiao Xian not possessed superpowers, she would have been the one facing harm. Yuezheng Ting would have shown no mercy towards her. Xiao Xian was merely returning the favor in kind. For Yuezheng Ting, it might have been disheartening to marry in her hometown. However, in the long run, it might not necessarily be a negative outcome for her. Living in the province would have led to her own downfall, similar to what happened to her sister. First, Madame couldn't help but feel a sense of happiness when Ms.Mi Jr. and her daughter disappeared from their sight. And her joy only increased upon receiving Xiao Xian's gift. So, first Madame invited Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan to spend the night at the Yuezheng family's residence. Since their stay was short, there were no complications in their journey back home. Yuezheng Shao also extended the offer for them to stay. Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan gladly accepted the invitation. The next day, Shao Yunduan accompanied Xiao Xian as they planted papayas and dragon fruits. Yuezheng Shao and Xie Jingrong joined them, eager to witness the process. They were astonished by the appearance of the dragon fruit seeds. Xiao Xian instructed the seeds to be sorted based on their size, as they exhibited various shapes and sizes. Carefully they were planted in separate patches, ensuring proper spacing. Xiao Xian believed that some preparation could be done with the dragon fruit seeds before they were planted, unlike the papaya seeds that could be directly planted without any additional steps. Chapter 831, Fruit Seeds U. TED by BX0ville. Xiaomicron Xiao Xian signaled the workers to follow the height markings she had drawn. The seeds were divided into sections, first 2, then 3, resulting in the growth of multiple trees. With the trees ready, they could be planted directly into the earth. Xie Jingrong and Yuezheng Shao were both astonished by this sight. Planting fruit seeds turned out to be much simpler than they had imagined. After providing instructions to the manager on what to do and where to plant the seeds, Xiao Xian and Xiao Yunduan didn't need to visit the land again until everything was completed. However, Xiao Xian made sure to use her superpower to strengthen the plants, ensuring their survival during the winter. Once everything was settled, they returned the orchid to Xie Jingrong. We were fortunate enough to save the flower. We wouldn't take away something you cherished. Young Master Xie, you can have the flower back, Xiao Xian said casually, but Xie Jingrong was taken aback. Is this the orchid one gave to Brother Shao? Xie Jingrong asked, unable to contain his surprise. Xiao Yunduan nodded. Yes, it is. You recognized it, didn't you? Xie Jingrong did recognize it, but he was too shocked to believe it. Thus he asked the obvious question. Brother Shao and sister-in-law, you are simply incredible. Xie Jingrong exclaimed, filled with awe. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the living flower before him. Xie Jingrong had a deep love for orchids and possessed extensive knowledge about various precious varieties. He couldn't do anything to revive the dying flower, but he didn't want to discard it either. Thus, he entrusted it to Xiao Yunduan, who came from a family with thriving plants, hoping for a miracle. However, he never expected Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian to bring him such a tremendous surprise. Elle gave you the flower, so you should keep it? Xie Jingrong expressed his gratitude before politely declining their proposal. However, recalling the fact that the flower had been saved by the couple, Xie Jingrong couldn't help but feel puzzled. He couldn't remember what he had given them, especially when the flower had been rescued by their efforts. Xiao Yunduan turned to Xiao Xian with a smile, indicating that she should make the decision. Xiao Xian smiled back and said, Young Master Xie, don't worry about it. I saved one bud from the orchid, and it will bloom when the weather turns warmer next year. So, you should keep the original flower after all. We didn't do much, just offered our help in whatever way we could. It might seem impressive to you because you're not an expert in this field, added Xiao Yunduan with a smile. Brother Xie, please accept it just as my wife suggested. After contemplating for a moment, Xie Jingrong accepted the flower and said, All right then, I'll accept it. Thank you so much, Brother Shao and sister-in-law. I will cherish this and take it back. With gratitude in his heart, Xie Jingrong decided, Okay, I will take it back. Thank you so much for taking care of them. That's wonderful. Everyone laughed, and a sense of harmony filled the air as the matter was resolved. Xie Jingrong smiled, his admiration for the couple in front of him growing stronger. He couldn't help but appreciate their thoughtfulness and selflessness. The couple fully understood the value of the orchid, knowing how exceptionally precious it was. If Xiao Yunduan had used this orchid to help Xie Jingrong secure a favorable outcome in the upcoming spring examination, it would undoubtedly provide him with a strong foundation for his future. However, they didn't choose that path. Instead, they returned the flower to Xie Jingrong. There were few individuals in the world who possessed the level of composure and emotional stability that this couple exhibited. It was a testament to their exceptional character. Chapter 832, Fruit Planting U. TED by BX0ville. Xiaomicron M, and among those rare individuals, finding a woman like Xiao Xian was even more extraordinary. Xie Jingrong felt a sense of admiration and gratitude towards the couple, so he presented them with a pot of green first-class orchids and a pot of Song-Mei orchids. These orchids were not only rare and valuable but also possessed breathtaking beauty. Xiao Yunduan and Xiao Xian graciously accepted the gifts, appreciating Xie Jingrong's kind gesture. 2 days later, the papayas and dragon fruits were successfully planted. They had managed to cultivate 30 mu of papayas and 50 mu of dragon fruits, which was half of what Xiao Xian had initially anticipated. However, they viewed this as an experimental phase and were willing to take things slowly. Surviving the upcoming winter was crucial. If they could endure and thrive during this season, it would pave the way for their success in the future. Xiao Xian had a plan to gradually expand their cultivation once they had proven their resilience. Failure to survive the winter would mean the end for their endeavors. Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian diligently inspected the plants, and Xiao Xian secretly utilized her superpower to enhance their growth. She carefully infused vitality and energy into the roots, akin to providing them with the best possible nourishment. However, Xiao Xian had her limitations when using her superpower. It drained her energy, and maintaining secrecy proved to be challenging. The entire process consumed an entire afternoon. When they were finally finished, Xiao Xian let out a sigh of relief, feeling physically and mentally exhausted. She was grateful that her energy would replenish overnight, allowing her to continue her work the following day. Realizing that their efforts thus far were insufficient, Xiao Xian instructed the manager to refrain from stacking the prepared corn stalks and straw. She wanted to ensure that if a severe frost occurred, the straw could be burned to create dense smoke, providing warmth to the surrounding air and protecting the fruit seedlings. As the day grew colder, the fields required the additional coverage of straw to safeguard the delicate roots. 2 days before their departure, Xiao Xian decided to infuse more of her superpower into the plants. She planned to provide them with an extra boost of energy during their visit to the province a month before the new year when they would purchase supplies. By employing all available methods, Xiao Xian believed that the effects would prove to be favorable. After bidding farewell to first Madame Yuezheng Shao and Xie Jingrong, Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan didn't spend much time in the province. Following the fruit and seed planting, they embarked on their journey back to the county. On their way to the village, they unexpectedly encountered Ms.Zhang, who had returned once again. Spotting Ms.Zhang from their cart, they momentarily doubted their eyes. However, Ms.Zhang sneered at them with a rigid expression and swiftly departed without saying a word. Upon their arrival home, Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan were warmly received by their family members who assisted them in sorting through the gifts and unloading the luggage. Xiao Xian's curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist asking about what had transpired in their absence. Miss Fang sneered and responded with irony, "Ah, that woman. The other night, during the rain, she came and fainted right at the doorstep of the second section of the family's home. And there she stayed. Erling still has some lingering feelings for her after all." Yang Xiani's eyes sparkled with excitement as she eagerly prepared to share the story. Xiao Xian captured the moment in a picture, wanting to remember it. Since her divorce, Ms. Zhang had been leading a tumultuous life with her mother and the rest of the family. She was constantly sobbing, her eyes red with grief. She expressed longing for her children and husband, and she carried a heavy burden of guilt regarding her brother. Her days were filled with sorrow. Mrs. Zhang voiced her frustration, complaining that Ms. Zhang was utterly useless and that she never saw her wear a happy expression. Chapter 833, Ms. Zhang's Return. Ted by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicronem. Mrs. Zhang's annoyance with Ms. Zhang grew stronger, as she believed her daughter not only brought no benefits to the family but also caused her precious son to be beaten. Consequently, Ms. Zhang was cast out by the Shao family and forced to rely on her mother's support. Mrs. Zhang's frustration escalated, leading to verbal and physical abuse towards Ms. Zhang. She compelled her daughter to rise before daybreak and perform exhausting labor in the fields, while intentionally depriving her of sufficient food. Ms. Zhang received only half a bowl of rice and a bowl of rotten vegetables, devoid of salt and oil. She was constantly referred to as the useless woman and trash, who only consumed without contributing anything positive to the family. This treatment left Ms. Zhang feeling deeply saddened and burdened by guilt. She believed herself to be useless to her mother's family and accepted the curses and blame as her way of atoning for her perceived sins. Silently enduring the hardships, Ms. Zhang worked even harder, convinced that it was the only way to repay her sins and earn her mother's forgiveness. Unfortunately, her physical strength waned, and she soon fell ill due to exhaustion and hunger. Ms. Zhang held on to the hope that her illness would garner care, forgiveness, or at least a decent meal, considering the tremendous effort she had put into her work. However, Mrs. Zhang responded with even more furious curses and harsh disappointment, shattering Ms. Zhang's expectations. Mrs. Zhang directed her anger towards Ms. Zhang, accusing her of intentionally falling ill to avoid work and bringing misfortune to the family as a heartless and wicked woman. She withheld any concern, care, or food from her daughter, offering only disdain and hatred. These words pierced Ms. Zhang's heart like a sharp blade. Her hope crumbled, shattered by her mother's lack of compassion. Shocked and disheartened, Ms. Zhang's motivation to work hard diminished. She became less active in labor, frequently pausing and becoming lost in her thoughts. Tears would stream down her face as she cried silently. Mrs. Zhang, however, grew even more relentless in her treatment of Ms. Zhang. She continued to berate her for being useless, emphasizing that even receiving any portion of food at home was futile, as she believed raising her had been a pointless endeavor. Zhang felt immense sadness, shedding tears in solitude every day. Unable to bear it any longer, a few days ago she impulsively fled Zhang village and embarked on a journey to Shading village, crying heavily along the way. So one morning, when Ms.Mi opened her home's door, she let out a piercing scream, nearly fainting in fright at the sight of a disheveled and distressed woman standing in the cold weather. As Ms.Mi realized that the woman at her gate was Ms.Zhang, she couldn't bring herself to allow her former daughter-in-law to collapse there. Despite her stingy and greedy nature, she couldn't leave her in such a dire state, especially considering the cold and rainy weather that could have led to her demise. Begrudgingly, Ms.Mi enlisted the help of Ms. Yen to carry Ms. Zhang into a room, where she was provided with a bowl of ginger soup. It was an act of begrudging kindness, compelled by the circumstances. In the evening, when Shao returned home and discovered the situation, he was taken aback and immediately went to summon a doctor. Overwhelmed with emotions, the couple embraced each other and wept. Shao hadn't anticipated the extent of the suffering Ms. Zhang had endured in her own home. Seeing her dressed in tattered clothing, significantly thinner, and with hands marred by wounds and scars, his heart softened. The sight of their mother in such a pitiful state brought tears streaming down the faces of their two children. Chapter 834, Their Fault You. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Shao Erlang's determination to protect Ms. Zhang and ensure her safety was unwavering. He refused to drive her away, understanding that it would only lead to her demise. Desperate, he knelt down before his parents, Ms.Mi and second uncle, pleading for their forgiveness and begging them to allow Ms. Zhang to stay. He promised to take responsibility for her, vowing to guide her and prevent her from making any further mistakes. However, he made it clear that his compassion was contingent on their acceptance of Ms. Zhang. Initially, both second uncle and Ms.Mi were infuriated by Shao Erlang's pleas. They hurled curses at him, deeming him foolish for his persistence. They reluctantly agreed to let Ms. Zhang stay, primarily for the sake of the children. Shao Erlang's relentless persuasion had worn them down, though their resentment toward Ms. Zhang was apparent. Ms. Zhang overheard their conversation and a sense of bitterness welled up within her. She had been treated as a slave within her own family, and the moment she had access to decent food and clothing, she forgot about her past misery. Now she harbored a deep hatred towards Ms.Mi and second uncle, blaming them for the circumstances she found herself in. In her mind, if they had shown her even a modicum of kindness, she would not have fallen into such a desperate situation. She held them responsible for her misfortune. Despite Ms. Zhang's troubled presence, her husband, Shao Erlang, remained the only redeeming figure within the Shao family. The rest of the family members were seen as lacking in goodness and virtue. Zhang soon caused trouble once again, and this time it seemed that her fate was sealed. Tearful apologies and kowtows ensued, forcing Ms.Mi to reluctantly tolerate Ms. Zhang's presence once more. The situation infuriated Ms. Yen, who vented her frustrations to Shao Xilang behind closed doors. In an attempt to placate his wife, Shao Xilang resorted to flattery and consolation. Only then did Ms. Yen find some solace. With Ms. Zhang back in the household, it became imperative to retrieve the divorce papers. Ms.Mi enlisted the help of Shao Erlang and several villagers from the same village to retrieve the documents from the Zhang village. It was necessary to rectify the situation, as having Ms. Zhang remain under their roof without the proper legal documentation would tarnish the family's reputation. However, to their surprise, the Zhang family, including Mrs. Zhang, proved to be peculiar individuals. They insisted that since Ms. Zhang had divorced and remarried, the Shao family must compensate them with wedding gifts before they would release the divorce papers. Since Ms. Zhang was not divorced for too long, the Zhang family called for just 30 liang as the wedding gifts. Otherwise there would be no divorce paper. Ms.Mi was utterly shocked by Mrs. Zhang's shameless behavior. She vehemently refused to offer any monetary compensation, condemning Mrs. Zhang as greedy and outrageous. In her view, 30 liang was far too exorbitant. With that amount they could easily find a new young girl to marry Shao Erlang. According to Ms.Mi, Ms. Zhang was not worth 30 liang at all. She decided not to pursue the divorce papers any further. Instead, she planned to bring Ms. Zhang back to their own family and seek out a matchmaker to find a pretty and beautiful young girl for Shao Erlang's marriage. Mrs. Zhang seethed with anger, accusing the Shao family of bullying. Ms.Mi sharply retorted, telling Shao Erlang to accompany her home. She declared that she did not need such despicable relatives. Shao Erlang was equally taken aback by the situation. He had not anticipated this turn of events. The Zhang family's demands were excessive, and their behavior bordered on harassment. Shao Erlang chose to remain silent, recognizing that further involvement would likely invite even more trouble. Eventually, someone informed the land officer about the situation. The land officer deemed the matter too humiliating for the village and intervened to restore peace. He compelled Ms.Zhang to provide the divorce papers. The land officer regarded Ms.Zhang as fortunate that the Shao family was willing to accept her. Ms.Zhang's demand for 30 liang as a wedding gift was considered nonsensical. She appeared to be driven solely by a desire for maximum profit, charging exorbitant amounts without any sense of reason or fairness. Chapter 835, Miserable You. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicronem, however, Ms.Mi had no interest in bargaining with Mrs. Zhang. She simply stated that she no longer needed Ms. Zhang and insisted that she should return to her own home. Mrs. Zhang started to panic. She wished that Ms. Zhang could stay with the Shao family, as they were living a more prosperous life. Mrs. Zhang believed that they could surely benefit from having Ms. Zhang in their household. The intervention of the land officer forced Mrs. Zhang to concede. She had no choice but to offer the divorce papers. The chaotic situation finally came to an end. People inside and outside the village ridiculed the Zhang family for their irrational behavior. The family's reputation suffered a severe blow due to having a divorced daughter and an unmarried girl in their household. The Zhang family's demand for 30 liang as a remarriage gift was seen as outrageous and embarrassing. Ms. Zhang returned to the Shao family, but she knew she would face mockery and disdain. She had become a target of hatred due to her past actions. People showed no friendliness towards Ms. Zhang. Those who used to socialize with her now kept their distance. They hurried past her or took alternate routes to avoid her. Women with children regarded her with caution, eyeing her warily as if she might dose a threat to their children. Fearing that Ms. Zhang would TRV to kidnap them for money. Ms. Zhang felt a deep sense of misery and bitterness mixed with anger. She resented those people who judged her without understanding the difficulties she had faced. She believed she had been driven to her actions. Simultaneously, Ms. Zhang harbored resentment towards Ms.Mi, the matriarch of the Shao family, and everyone else from the Shao family. She viewed them as cruel and heartless, attributing her current circumstances to their actions. No one was aware of the depth of Ms. Zhang's grudge, but she was now back in her husband's home. Hearing Yang Xiaoni and Ms. Fang's gossip, Xiao Xian found herself at a loss for words. However, she wasn't entirely surprised by the situation. Ms. Zhang, with her 2 young children, collapsed at the gate of the house. Shao Erlang, still having feelings for his wife, was determined to keep her by his side. However, given the previous incidents, people were becoming increasingly wary of her, and it seemed like a volatile situation was about to erupt. Xiao Xian doubted that Ms. Zhang would be able to stay in the second section of the family for long. She inquired, "How does second aunt-in-law treat Ms. Zhang? Is she kind to her?" "Of course not." Yang Xiaoni eagerly shared the details. She pursed her lips, expressing disdain, and replied, "Second aunt-in-law never treats her well, given what she did in the past. According to what the fourth sister-in-law told me, Ms. Zhang is not allowed to participate in any family matters. She is prohibited from entering the kitchen or being near the children. Second aunt-in-law watches her closely as if she were a thief. After breakfast, she is forced to work in the fields and is not allowed to return until lunchtime. The same continues in the afternoon, and she isn't allowed to come home until evening. They won't let her stay at home anyway, fearing she might come up with some strange ideas again." Chapter 836, Unpredictable You. TED by BX Zeroville. Xiaomicronem Xiao Xian's heart raced with concern. It was understandable that Ms.Mi might feel anxious after the previous incident. However, her current behavior seemed excessive. Xiao Xian worried that Ms. Zhang could suffer mentally from such treatment. Although Ms. Zhang had been described as narrow-minded, dumb, and extreme, her potential actions remained unpredictable. Considering that Ms.Mi had agreed to take Ms. Zhang in, it was inappropriate to treat her this way. However, Ms.Mi was not enthusiastic about accepting Ms. Zhang in the first place. It was Shao Erlang who insisted, and Ms.Mi herself was not known for being open-minded. The situation was becoming increasingly chaotic, and the future appeared uncertain to all involved. Xiao Xian confided in Ms. Fang, seeking her opinion on the matter. Ms. Fang furrowed her brows and spoke abruptly, "Your second aunt-in-law is also causing trouble with her foolishness. If she chose to take her in, she should let go of the past and be more open-minded. What's the point otherwise?" Xiao Xian expressed concern that another incident might occur, especially for the sake of the two young children involved. They were innocent and deserved better. In light of this, Xiao Xian pondered whether it was necessary to warn Ms.Mi after all, and shared these thoughts with Ms. Fang. Ms. Qiao's face brightened with a smile upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. Mom, you're so understanding. You can have a conversation with second aunt-in-law, but ultimately, it's up to her whether she wants to accept it. Exactly. I can only provide the warning, but I can't force her to listen. Their family affairs are not my concern. Soon Ms. Fang approached Ms. Nio to discuss the matter. However, Ms. Nio dismissed every word Ms. Fang said, even going so far as to label her as nosy and relishing in her supposed misery. Treating Ms. Zhang better was out of the question for Ms. Nio. She believed that Ms. Fang's intentions were to ensure they didn't lead a good life. Ms. Fang grew increasingly frustrated by this response. She vented her frustrations at home, only ceasing when Xiao Xian and Yang Xiaoni tried to console her. The warning had been given but not accepted. Nevertheless, they no longer felt guilty about not passing on the message. They would be cautious to avoid becoming entangled in their misfortune. The first section of the family had a good relationship with Ms. Yan. So when Ms. Yan came to visit, Yang Xiaoni discreetly offered her some reminders to be prepared. However, there was no need to inform others about this. Ms. Yan was taken aback by the revelation. Ms. Yan also recognized that her mother-in-law's behavior was excessive. She had not anticipated the potential mental distress that Ms. Zhang might experience or the possibility of her engaging in further unpredictable actions. Nevertheless, the warning served as a reminder and left her feeling uneasy. Ms. Yan nodded in agreement and assured Xiao Xian that she was aware of the situation. Admittedly, Ms. Zhang had a peculiar temperament, and under the treatment she received from Ms. Nio, she could potentially cause trouble once again. Ms. Yan, however, wanted to avoid getting entangled in the situation. She questioned why she had to be involved in the first place. Subsequently, people's attention began to shift away from Ms. Zhang as a significant event unfolded in the village. A military recruitment order had been issued for Shaoding village. The Ding family and the Shao family were each required to send one person to join the army. Panic spread throughout the village as families with less than 2 sons became anxious. The realization that joining the army meant potential suffering and the risk of being killed in battle made everyone desperate to prevent their sons from being drafted. The only exceptions were families too impoverished to support their child or those who harbored dislike towards their own offspring. Chapter 837, Chias Wishu. Ted by BX Zeroville. Siamikronem. However, the villagers in this area were leading relatively comfortable lives. No families were without a home or lacked food. Consequently, the idea of getting involved in the military recruitment was met with reluctance. Unexpectedly, Qi himself proposed to join the army, catching his family off guard. It happened right after they had enjoyed a delightful dinner prepared by Xiao Xian. Everyone was taken aback, thinking they must have misheard him. Qi reiterated his proposal, and Miss Fang immediately snapped at him, "You foolish child." She raised her hand as if to slap him, but the others intervened swiftly, preventing any harm. "Qi, don't be reckless. You can't speak of such matters so casually. Yes, we have more than enough food and clothing at home. Joining the army is extremely dangerous. Stay here with us. Going into battle as a soldier is terrifying. It's much safer to remain at home. You're still young and ignorant. Don't go, just stay with us. Listen carefully. This discussion must not leave this room or reach anyone else. I will not hesitate to deal with anyone who spreads this news." Only Xiao Xian and Shao Yunduan remained silent, contemplating the situation. Qi felt deeply saddened by his family's reactions. He turned to Shao Yunduan, his 5th brother, and asked with determination, "Do you also find me ridiculous? Do you object to my proposal?" "Don't speak to him. Of course he objects. Let's end this discussion now or I will beat you." Miss Fang became irritated once again, and she was about to physically harm Qi when the others intervened and stopped her. Through sobs, Miss Fang exclaimed, "You foolish boy. You're deliberately trying to anger me. We had just started to experience happiness in our lives and now this." Shao Yunduan spoke in a gentle tone, "Mom, please don't worry. Dad, let me have a private conversation with Qi. We'll have a meaningful talk." Miss Fang and eldest uncle sighed with relief. Miss Fang nodded, saying, "Convince him to change his mind." "Don't worry, Mom." Shao Yunduan led Qi away to the study in his own yard. Inside the study, Qi lowered his head, biting his lip, visibly distressed. Shao Yunduan looked at Qi intently and let out a heartfelt sigh. Qi had grown taller and stronger. He was no longer a child. In another 2 or 3 years, Chi might even surpass his older brother in height and strength. Would he become stronger than him as well? Chi had already displayed impressive capabilities. He could hunt large animals with ease, displaying remarkable skill and agility. His sharp gaze and proficiency with the bow made him truly admirable. It was impossible for anyone to perceive him as just an ordinary teenager given his exceptional abilities. Shao Yunduan honestly didn't believe that he should confine Chi indoors. Chi, not as eloquent as his fifth brother, scratched his head and turned to Shao Yunduan. "Fifth brother, I can take care of myself. Please let me join the army." Shao Yunduan asked, "Are you certain about this?" Chi nodded vigorously, his determination evident. Yes. I really want to join the army. You understand that joining the army is not a trivial matter. Once you're enlisted, there's no turning back. Deserters are beheaded. When you're in the camp, you'll start as a low-ranking soldier, enduring the harshest living and eating conditions, worse than what our family has experienced in the past. If you have a harsh commander, your life will become even more miserable. Chapter 838, Deep Consideration U. TED by BX0ville. Xiaomicronym, daily training will be grueling, and in times of war, soldiers like you will be on the front lines. There's a real risk of losing your life or being used as bait. Aren't you afraid of that? Shao Yunduan questioned. Even if I become an officer as an advanced scholar from a recommended man, I may not be able to help you. Besides, the army doesn't consider where you're from. Your fate will depend solely on your own actions once you're there. Are you still determined to join the army? Shao Xiaoqi was taken aback, but his hesitation only lasted for a moment before he nodded. "Fifth brother, am not afraid. I want to join the army. I feel the need to do something meaningful with my life or ill regret it in the future. With you and fifth sister-in-law at home, I won't fear anything or have anything to be afraid of. That's enough for me." Shao Yunduan chuckled. "You're just a kid. What do you understand about the things adults talk about? Don't worry about our family." Shao Xiaoqi smiled sheepishly. "Don't answer me so hastily. Take some rest and think it over. The recruitment process won't be completed so quickly. The deadline is still a few days away. Take a couple of days to ponder on it and let me know then." Shao Zioki's eyes brightened. He added, "Fifth brother L. No more words for now. Pretend I haven't heard anything. Go and contemplate. Don't make any impulsive decisions. Chi, this is your life and one won't interfere. But you must take responsibility for your choices and think through them thoroughly. Remember, you have loving parents and siblings who genuinely care about you." Tears welled up in Shao Zioki's eyes as he nodded. Shao Xiaoqi quietly retreated to his own room to avoid his mother's scolding. Shao Yunduan contemplated something else in the study before gathering his thoughts and heading to his parents. Ms. Fang anxiously inquired, "Did you stop him? Where is he?" "Don't worry, Mom." Shao Yunduan reassured her with a smile. Al explained everything to him and gave him 2 more days to think it over. "Mom and Dad, let's not keep nagging about this. Let's wait and see." Ms. Fang declared, "One will never agree to this. He's not going anywhere. I will keep him confined to a room until the recruitment period passes. I will definitely put a stop to it." Qiao Xian remained silent, observing the conversation. Xiao Sanlang rubbed his hands together and enthusiastically agreed, stating it was a brilliant idea. They should indeed do that. Shao Yunduan sighed helplessly. Qi is a grown man, not an object to be controlled. It wouldn't be fair to confine him. L don't care. I am his mother and am doing this for his own good. Ms. Fang retorted. However, she cast a skeptical glance at Shao Yunduan. "Duan, tell me, did you agree with his decision?" Shao Sanlang chimed in, "Mom, of course not. Fifth brother would never be so unreliable." Shao Dalong nodded in agreement. "Absolutely, fifth brother is always level-headed." Qiao Xian pondered for a moment, then winked at Shao Yunduan with a smile. Shao Yunduan rubbed his nose and cleared his throat. "Regardless, Mom, don't worry. Qi will do just fine." Ms. Fang sighed and muttered, "I still can't shake off this uneasy feeling in my heart." Chapter 839, Not for Her You. TED by BX0ville. Xiaomicron they couldn't reach a definite conclusion, leaving everyone in a state of unease. They sought solace in one another's company, particularly the parents, before retiring to their respective rooms. Once they were alone, Qiao Xian smiled at Shao Yunduan. "Darling, is Qi really going? And you're supporting his decision?" Shao Yunduan smiled bitterly. "It appears that he has made up his mind. Besides, he's no longer a child. He has the right to make his own choices. It would be cruel to force him to stay, Shao Yunduan didn't want Qi to go, but ultimately it was his own life, and Shao Yunduan couldn't make decisions on his behalf. He turned to Qiao Xian. What do you think? Qiao Xian pondered for a moment and chuckled. Qi is quite capable of taking care of himself. He's not impulsive either. If you can advise him to be low profile, stay calm and prioritize his well-being, and remind him of his family whenever he's about to engage in something dangerous, I believe everything will be fine. Qi is different from his peers. He has a brother like you. Maybe you won't be able to directly take care of him once you become an advanced scholar, but in a few years, you might be able to transfer him out of the camp if it's possible. Alternatively, we can provide some financial assistance. Just look at us now. We have connections with the Xie family. If you can ask them to write a recommendation letter for Qi, it could serve as his safeguard in case he encounters any trouble. So, I believe it's a viable idea. Qi is so talented. It would be a waste for him to stay at home for the rest of his life. Qiao Xian suppressed her urge to reveal her clairvoyant abilities. After all, they were sporadic and she couldn't predict Qi's entire future. If only she could glimpse a small portion of it in secret. Shao Yunduan smiled. Your analysis has eased my mind. Indeed, if Qi has made up his mind, he should go. I will approach the Xie family for a recommendation letter as his safeguard. With his skills, he should be able to protect himself. If the hardships become unbearable, we can find a way to bring him home in a few years. Qiao Xian smiled. That's a conservative estimate. I almost believe he has the potential to become an official with his talents. Shao Yunduan chuckled and shook his head. That might not be necessary. The most important thing is that he remains safe and well, Qiao Xian inquired. So, how do you plan to break this news to our parents? Shao Yunduan. That was indeed a troublesome task. Qiao Xian shook her head and raised her hands. Don't look at me. I'm not going to do it. It was evident that anyone who brought up this topic would face scolding, including Shao Yunduan. Qiao Xian had no intention of taking on such a task. Shao Yunduan was torn between amusement and exasperation. Of course not you, my dear. I will handle it. He wouldn't allow her to be scolded. Being his mother's son, he would shield her from any scolding. Qiao Xian chuckled. You're the best. The couple continued their conversation, sharing laughter, and eventually settled down. She was quite mischievous. He managed to avoid spending much time alone with Miss Fang and eldest uncle these days. Chapter 840, Getting Scolded You. TED by BX in Zeroville. Xiaomicronim. Despite agreeing to let Qi think for a couple more days, Miss Fang couldn't stop worrying about the situation. She wanted to have a serious conversation with Qi, urging him to think carefully. However, Qi managed to avoid her at all costs, which only increased Miss Fang's frustration. The mother's relentless pursuit was met with the son's constant evasion, creating a sort of guerrilla warfare between them. The rest of the family found the situation amusing but refrained from laughing, fearing it might escalate the tension. Finally, the 2 days had passed and the atmosphere in the household was tense. Miss Fang, eldest uncle, Qi and Shao Yunduan were all on edge. As the middleman, Shao Yunduan had the weighty task of negotiating between them. But Qi remained resolute in his decision to join the army. Miss Fang snapped at him and even attempted to hit him, but her anger couldn't sway his determination. After venting her frustration, Miss Fang became overwhelmed with anxiety and broke down in tears. If you don't want to get married now, it'll stop anyone from coming to our door. Well, wait until you're willing to get married. But don't get so angry about our arrangements that you want to leave home. Miss Su and Yang Xiaoni were taken aback and didn't know how to respond. Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian were completely baffled by the situation. Shao Yunduan said, Mom, what happened? Qi wouldn't leave home just because he's angry. He and Tao Tao won't get married unless they're willing to. We don't force them into anything. Miss Fang continued to sob and shake her head, unable to fully express her feelings. Sensing her distress, Yang Xiaoni decided to share her insights. Yang Xiaoni explained that Qi was no longer young, and as he grew older, many suitors came to the door seeking a marriage arrangement. This had motivated Miss Fang to explore potential matches for him. After all, good suitors were not always easy to find. On the second day after Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan had left home, a distant cousin of Miss Fang suddenly appeared at their door with her 2 daughters. Although they hadn't interacted frequently in the past, they were still family, and Miss Fang was delighted to see them. This cousin seemed to be quite lively and quickly engaged in a cheerful conversation with Miss Fang. This cousin was not here without purpose. She was here to build a martial alliance. She was trying to make Miss Fang to let Qi marry one of her 2 daughters. Miss Fang was not easily swayed by her cousin's proposition. Although they were relatives, they hadn't maintained a close relationship over the years. Ms. Fang felt it was necessary to gather more information about this relative and her two daughters before making any decisions regarding the marital alliance. Rather than rejecting the idea outright, Ms. Fang tactfully expressed that her son was still young and it would be prudent to wait for a couple more days before discussing the matter further. The cousin agreed and understood, remarking that parents were always deeply concerned about their children's well-being and should carefully consider all aspects before entering into a marital alliance. Ms. Fang was relieved that she could buy some time to properly evaluate the situation and make an informed decision for her son's future. She wanted to ensure that any potential match would be suitable and compatible, taking into account both personal and family considerations. Chapter 841, Deep Night You. Ted by BX0ville. Xiaomicronim. After hearing that, Ms. Fang felt a pang of guilt and realized that she had been too harsh with her cousin. It seemed that her cousin was actually quite reasonable and level-headed. The two nieces appeared to be quiet, gentle, and even attractive. Perhaps they could be a suitable choice after all. Fang was almost ready to make a decision. She decided to observe Qi's reaction first and see if he was open to accepting them, before finalizing any alliance. However, she soon discovered that her distant cousin was deceitful. She was scheming to manipulate her eldest daughter into seducing Qi, hoping to force the Shao family into marrying her daughter. As the girl entered the Shao family's luxurious home, she couldn't help but envy their wealth. The house was grand and well lit, and everyone in the Shao family was adorned with jade bracelets and silver ornaments. They enjoyed plentiful meals with meat, unlike her own family who often had to make do with simple grains and rice. This made her even more jealous. Feeling desperate when Ms. Fang didn't readily approve of their proposal, the girl's mother came up with a terrible idea. Despite her nervousness, she gathered her courage and reluctantly agreed to the plan. Initially, their plan was to stage a fall, pretending to accidentally stumble into Qi's arms. However, they soon realized that this wouldn't be solid evidence to convince Ms. Fang. She could easily deny it and cause a commotion. It was clear that Ms. Fang had reservations about them, which made her unwilling to proceed. If they only relied on a staged fall, she could easily dismiss it and create a fuss about the incident. Only when the girl's reputation was completely ruined would their deceitful plan have a chance of success. That evening after dinner, the girl made an excuse to retire early to her guest room. However, instead of sleeping, she sneaked into Qi's yard and eventually into his room. Qi had his own yard, and his room's door was left unlocked, even during the night. It was an easy task for the girl to enter unnoticed. Coincidentally, earlier in the day, Ms. Fang had left Qi's blankets out in the sun to air but had forgotten to bring them back to his room. As Qi carried the blankets back to his bedroom, Ms. Fang accompanied him, holding a lamp to light their way. Upon entering the room, they noticed a silhouette projected on the wall. At first they were startled, but they quickly regained their composure. Qi, known for his bravery and skill in handling crises, silently gestured to Ms. Fang, urging her to stay calm. With careful steps, Qi approached and grasped the object responsible for the silhouette. The girl, caught off guard by Qi's presence, let out a scream of fright. Both Ms. Fang and Qi were taken aback by the unexpected situation unfolding before them. Their shock intensified upon realizing the girl's late-night presence. What could she possibly be doing here at such a time? Soon, realization dawned upon Ms. Fang, and a wave of embarrassment flushed over her. Qi, on the other hand, was instantly overcome with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. It became clear to both of them that this girl had deliberately snuck into an unmarried man's room and concealed herself in the corner with a specific motive in mind. Meanwhile, the cousin who had orchestrated this plan had been extremely anxious and completely focused on the task at hand. Although the Shao family had a sizable yard, it was not as expansive as those belonging to true noble and affluent families. Considering the proximity of the rooms, if a scream were to erupt, it would undoubtedly reach the ears of the other family members. Chapter 842, A Trick You. Ted by BX0ville. Xiaomicronim. The entire family was taken aback by the events unfolding before them. Upon hearing her daughter's genuine scream, the cousin felt a mix of surprise and inner satisfaction. The authenticity of the scream delighted her, as it seemed her daughter had played her part convincingly. Shao Xiaoqi, despite his gentle and introverted demeanor, had surprised the cousin with his apparent eagerness. It served as a reminder not to judge people solely based on their outward appearance. The cousin's pride swelled within her, fueling her next actions. Hastily, she rushed forward, not even taking a moment to clearly assess the situation behind the door. "Oh, my poor girl. You must have been mistreated." I will seek justice for you and ensure you don't suffer any longer. Ah. Before she could finish her words, a forceful slap landed on her face. Miss Fang, pointing accusatorily at her, screamed in outrage. Why are you screaming? What justice are you talking about? I demand an explanation as to why your daughter is in my son's room. What devious plans have you concocted, you shameless woman? Startled, the cousin finally noticed Miss Fang's presence. Her face filled with astonishment as she covered her stinging cheek, momentarily ignoring the pain. Cousin, what are you doing here? With a sneer, Miss Fang retorted, I was here holding the lamp for my son. Of course I am here. Thankfully I am here, or else my son would have fallen into your trap. The cousin was taken aback, turning instinctively to look at her daughter, seeking answers in her eyes. It was only in that moment that the cousin realized her daughter's panic had been genuine, causing a surge of regret to wash over her. Caught red-handed by Miss Fang, the cousin found herself in a powerless position. As an outsider to the village, she was at a significant disadvantage compared to Miss Fang, who was the mother of the provincial champion. Moreover, the Shao family had recently made substantial contributions to the village, including building a school and donating vast tracts of land to the clan. The village would undoubtedly rally behind Miss Fang, further isolating the cousin. The next day, the cousin and her two daughters swiftly disappeared, seeking to escape the repercussions of their actions. Ms. Fang, in order to preserve their reputation, decided to keep the incident a secret, ensuring that no one in the family would ever speak of it. However, from that point forward, she vowed to sever all ties with the cousin's family. Qi, likely startled by the entire ordeal, advised Miss Fang against arranging any future martial unions for him. Miss Fang couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. She refused to let Qi entertain such thoughts and resolved to find a suitable suitor, promising herself that such a situation would never occur again. Qi had no choice but to comply and refrain from mentioning the incident any further. However, on this particular day Miss Fang spoke of the incident, even entertaining the belief that Qi had chosen to leave home and join the army to evade any future marital arrangements. The rest of the family was left dumbfounded upon hearing this conjecture, unsure of how to respond. Eldest uncle remained silent, his disapproval evident on his somber face. Feeling helpless, Qi turned to Shao Yunduan, his expression filled with longing and desperation. Shao Yunduan let out a heavy sigh, his head throbbing with the weight of the situation. He decided to lead Miss Fang and eldest uncle into the hall, seeking a private space for a conversation. Inside the hall, faint murmurs of argument could be heard, but they quickly gave way to Miss Fang's heart-wrenching sobs. Qi felt a profound sense of sadness wash over him, and his head drooped gradually. He began to consider the possibility of relinquishing his desire to join the army if it meant alleviating his mother's distress and waiting for another opportunity in the future. However, Shao Yunduan, through his persuasive efforts, managed to sway eldest uncle and Miss Fang. With a sudden burst of emotion, Miss Fang rushed out of the hall, engulfing Qi in a tight embrace. Amidst her tears, she cried, Qi, remember that we are all eagerly awaiting your safe return. Take care of yourself and come back home unharmed. Chapter 843, Agreement uttered by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem Zioki's eyes lit up with joy upon hearing his parents' agreement. Mom, Dad, you agreed? Miss Fang and eldest uncle couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness as they witnessed their son's elation upon receiving their approval. They realized that Qi truly desired to join the army, and it wouldn't be fair to confine him at home. They had to let him pursue his aspirations. Yes, we did. Just remember to stay safe and come back unharmed, eldest uncle affirmed. A tinge of sadness crept into Shao Zioki's expression. He nodded earnestly. Mom, Dad, don't worry. I will take care of myself and return home safe and sound. Okay. That's good to hear. Miss Fang replied, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and concern. She shared a few more words of advice and encouragement with Qi, who accepted them all. Miss Fang felt a sense of relief after receiving consolation from Shao Yunduan and Xiao Xian. Xiao Sanlang and Xiao Dalong were taken aback by their fifth brother's support for Qi. They hadn't expected him to side with Qi in this matter. As they contemplated Qi leaving for the army in February, a sense of sadness washed over them. If their fifth brother believed that Qi would be fine, they took solace in the notion that he would ensure Qi's safety. However, a lingering worry remained. What if something were to happen? When would Qi return to visit them after this? Would it be several more years? The thought of a prolonged separation only deepened their sorrow. The entire village was in a state of chaos due to the recruitment process. The land officer had announced that anyone interested in joining the army could freely apply. However, it was widely understood that only the foolish would willingly step forward. As a result, they resorted to drawing lots. Those selected through the drawing would be obligated to join the army on behalf of the village. It was seen as a fair approach. However, to everyone's surprise, the first section of the Shao family decided to volunteer without waiting for the drawing. Qi was enlisting in the army. The news sent shockwaves throughout the village. The villagers had assumed that the first section of the Shao family would be exempt from the drawing process. After all, Shao Yunduan held a prestigious position as a recommended man, bringing honor to the clan and sparing them from any troubles within the village. Moreover, the first section of the Shao family had already made significant contributions, donating vast stretches of land and funds for the school. These acts of generosity had earned them a level of respect and exemption from the drawing. However, those who voiced their dissent were expected to make their own contributions in the form of donations towards the fields and school before they were allowed to express their opinions. They had made such significant contributions to the village, and it was only fitting that they received certain privileges in return. That was what they rightfully deserved. However, Qi had volunteered. What on earth is the Shao family thinking? This is outrageous. Yes, how could they allow Qi to do this? It's not a laughing matter. Hell wouldn't have let him do it if I were them. Do you think that recommended man Shao has some insider information that could benefit them from the recruitment? You think they're after personal gains? No, certainly not. Despite the confusion and speculation, the matter had been settled. The Shao family breathed a collective sigh of relief and celebrated. Ms.Mi also felt relieved. She couldn't help but express her gratitude to Qi. She believed he was capable enough to ensure his own safety. If her husband had been selected through the drawing of lots, it would have been a dreadful situation. Ms. Nio and second uncle shared the same sentiment. They finally felt a sense of relief when Qi volunteered, knowing that their own son was spared from being chosen. Ms.Zhang's hands clenched tightly, her head lowered, and a coldness emanated from her eyes. Her lips twitched with disdain. She despised seeing Ms.Mi showering their parents with flattery like this. The first section of the family had never treated her well or helped her attain any form of prosperity. The most they had done for her was share some food. Yet, she still visited them whenever she found the time, seemingly content. Chapter 844. Settlement uttered by Bexenville. Xiaomacronem, shame on her. Shao Xiaoqi had decided to join the army? Something must be wrong with his head. The entire first section of the family was nothing but a bunch of fools. Well then, let him join the army and never return. Ms.Zhang cursed silently within herself. If it weren't for the first section of the family's coldness and meddling, she would not have ended up in this miserable state. None of the Ding family members were willing to step forward. Consequently, they had to resort to drawing lots. Only the family's sole child would be exempt from this process, while the rest would be included. In the end, it was Ding Jia's youngest son, Ding Jinshan, who was selected. Ding Jinshan and the entire family were in tears. The others, who felt a mix of relief and sadness, approached them to offer their condolences. And so the matter was settled. They would gather in the middle of February at the county and proceed to the province according to the government's arrangements. From there they would head north. It remained uncertain which general would oversee them once they reached the northern region. Normally this journey would take 5 years. The next day, Ding Jiazhu and Ms. Yang visited the first section of the Shao family with their son. They believed that they were in the same situation and should foster a friendship together. As soon as Ms. Yang saw Ms. Fang, she burst into tears and clutched Ms. Fang's hands. "Sister-in-law, why are we so unlucky? Our poor child." Ms. Fang's expression changed and she became displeased. She withdrew her hands and forced a smile. "Stop crying. Our sons will be fine. Perhaps they will return as officials, bringing us great honor, right?" Ms. Fang didn't actually expect Qi to become an official. She simply wanted her son to return home safely. But Ms. Yang's words seemed to carry a sense of bad luck, and she was trying to counteract that with her own optimistic remark. Ms. Yang realized that she had misspoken, feeling a bit embarrassed. However, her eyes suddenly brightened. She exclaimed, "Oh, you're right. Recommended man Shao is on his way to becoming an official, isn't he? He will take care of Qi, won't he? Let's ask him to take care of our son too. Jinshan, come and plead with recommended man Shao." Ding Jiazhu quickly grasped the opportunity and pushed his son forward, saying, "Yes, sister-in-law, we are all family. Please, recommended man Shao, you have to take care of us." Ms. Fang felt a sense of disgust rising within her. "Uncle Ding and Aunt Yang, you've misunderstood me. I still have the spring examination next year, and it's uncertain if I will even achieve the status of an advanced scholar. Even if I do, I won't be relocated to the north as an official. When they join the army, they must rely on themselves, practice diligently, and take good care of themselves. I won't be able to assist them. Ding Jiazhu wasn't entirely convinced. Really? Then why did you allow Qi to join the army? You must believe it's a good opportunity. Qi couldn't tolerate that. Uncle Ding, it was my own decision to seek a broader world. Ding Jiazhu responded curtly, still skeptical. Seeking a broader world? What an excuse. This journey is fraught with danger. Ms.Zhang chimed in. Regardless, you two are the closest friends and family there. You must take care of each other. Qi, you have skills like archery. My son, on the other hand, is helpless, so you must watch over him. Chapter 845. Annoyed by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem, Miss Fong and the others remained silent, processing Ms. Yang's words. Without the final sentence, Ms. Yang's remarks seemed acceptable. However, the last comment struck a nerve. Qi smiled reassuringly. Don't worry, we'll support each other. Good, that's good. Ding Jiazhu and Ms. Yang continued to nag for a while longer before departing with gloomy expressions. Ding Jinshan was still unmarried, which concerned Ms. Yang. She relentlessly searched for potential suitors for her son, hoping to secure a marriage and secure a bloodline in case Ding Jinshan faced an untimely demise. However, no respectable families were willing to accept them as in-laws in the current circumstances, unless they were previously engaged and had to expedite the wedding. Ultimately, they had to spend a considerable amount of money to arrange a wedding with a modest girl during the New Year festivities. As for the first branch of the Shao family, fewer suitors approached them for marriage alliances, and the overall quality of prospects was significantly lower. Prominent families were reluctant to marry off their daughters at this time, regardless of the Shao family's standing. However, impoverished families saw it as a golden opportunity to secure a marriage. Previously, they had never considered the Shao family, deeming them too prestigious. But the situation had changed. Shao Xiaoqi would soon be joining the army, with uncertainty regarding his return from the battlefield. Consequently, respectable families were unwilling to form a marital union, leaving an opening for families of lesser standing. The Shao family grew increasingly anxious to find a suitable bride for Shao Xiaoqi, ensuring the continuation of their bloodline. Fong was infuriated. She became so angry that she forcefully expelled the matchmaker who had brought a gambler's daughter as a potential bride for Qi. Ms. Fong snapped, declaring that Qi was not getting married and that they had not been consulted about the matter. Her outburst was seen as irrational by some elderly men from the clan. They suggested that if something were to happen to Qi, at least he could have a child to carry on the family line. Ms. Fong felt a pang in her heart, but eldest uncle found the suggestion reasonable. He added his own input, which sparked a heated argument with Ms. Fong. The other family members intervened to stop the fight, and Qi himself expressed that he did not feel the need to get married at the moment. The whole issue was eventually dropped. However, rumors began circulating about Ms. Fong. Some even claimed that she was possessed and intentionally mistreated her youngest son. Qi paid no attention to the rumors. He remained happy and content, spending most of his time hunting in the mountains. This allowed him to hone his archery skills and physical prowess. Occasionally, family members like Qiao Xian would accompany him to gather resources from the mountains, but Qi often ventured alone. Qi even extended an invitation to Ding Jinshan to join him for practice. He offered to teach him archery and share some valuable tips, although he kept the teachings from his master to himself. However, Ding Jinshan showed no interest in going, and his parents forbade him from doing so. It's too cold in the mountains and there are wild animals too. It's too dangerous, his parents protested. What's the point of practicing now? You have plenty of time to train in the military camp. It's better to rest at home, they insisted. Chapter 846. Grownup by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem Qi was at a loss for words, unable to express his thoughts further. He had exerted great effort to assist Ding Jinshan, but it appeared that his fellow villager was resistant to his help. This distressed Qi as he realized that Ding Jinshan's negative attitude could cause problems once they arrived at the military camp. Qi felt a tinge of embarrassment, unsure of how to handle the situation. In his desperation, he turned to his fifth brother, Shao Yunduan, seeking guidance. Shao Yunduan felt a sense of satisfaction, recognizing that Qi had matured and was no longer a child. However, instead of directly providing him with an answer, Shao Yunduan chose to steer Qi towards finding his own solution. He wanted Qi to think for himself and arrive at a decision independently. After some contemplation, Qi came to a conclusion. The following day, Shao Yunduan spoke. Once we are both at the military camp, One will take care of Ding Jinshan to the best of my abilities. One will talk to him and assist him as long as I can. However, I won't allow him to become a burden to me. My parents, as well as you, my brothers and sisters, hold greater importance in my life. Ding Jinshan is merely a neighboring villager, and I will inform him of his responsibilities. If he chooses not to listen, then our relationship ends there. Shao Yunduan nodded approvingly, wearing a smile. You're absolutely right. Do your best, but leave the rest to fate. There will be no reason for you to feel regretful. I have entrusted Manager Qin with the task of writing a letter to young Master Xie, requesting him to lend us some military books. Read them and prepare yourself. Shao Xiaoqi felt a slight pang of surprise. He wasn't particularly fond of reading, but since this idea came from his fifth brother, he knew he had to support it. Reluctantly, he nodded and said, Fine. I will read the books and seek your guidance if I come across anything one don't understand. Shao Yunduan nodded, his smile growing wider. Although Qi had never been fond of reading, Shao Yunduan believed that he could teach him to read well enough to understand the military books. And that was sufficient for Qi's purpose. As the year drew to a close, Ding Jinshan got married. The Shao family refrained from hosting a grand wedding, but as they contemplated Qi's departure, their initial happiness diminished, and they began to dote on Qi. Qi, however, failed to notice any difference. While he missed his home, the anticipation of his upcoming journey and the possibilities it held motivated him greatly. During their journey, Qi once again successfully hunted a wild boar, this time weighing a whopping 150 kilograms. Dozens of people came together to collect the wild boar. Qi and the other villagers had encountered wild boars before, but none as massive as this one. The wild boar was so large that it formed a small mound in the yard. Word spread, attracting many visitors to the village who came to witness the spectacle. They marveled at the long, sharp fangs and the thick, black mane resembling steel needles, finding them intimidating to behold. Yet it was Qi alone who had managed to bring down this formidable beast. Naturally, the villagers praised his archery skills. Qi is truly remarkable with his arrows. Qi's abilities are astounding. This beast leaves me in awe. No wonder his family is thrilled to have him join the army. He's destined for greatness. You're absolutely right. People began to comprehend the underlying reasons behind Qi's family's support for his decision. Miss Fang sighed, feeling a mix of emotions. She couldn't help but worry. Her child had grown up and formed his own ideas. As his mother, she couldn't simply take control of everything anymore. Chapter 847. Mute uttered by Bexenville. Tiamacronim. The most amusing aspect was that Ding Jinshan's family, upon witnessing the wild boar and Qi's consistent success in bringing home prey each year, found themselves reinvigorated with motivation. Ding Jinshan approached Qi, inviting him to accompany him on a mountain trip and beseeching him to impart his archery skills. Qi accepted the request. However, after merely 3 days, Ding Jinshan relinquished his pursuit. He lacked experience and struggled to locate any targets. When Qi spotted an animal and instructed him to shoot, Ding Jinshan lacked the strength to draw the bowstring. The substantial wild boar was shared among those who assisted in carrying it, as well as the second and third sections of the family. A generous portion was utilized to prepare a variety of dishes to be shared with the neighbors. Nevertheless, there remained over 100 kilograms of meat. Given the surplus smoked meat and sausages this year, there was no need to produce additional supplies. Instead, they could offer them as gifts during the New Year festivities, either before or after. Ms. Fang suggested to Ms. Su that they deliver the excess meat to her family as a gift. Fortunately, Ms. Su readily agreed. Consequently, the next day both Ms. Fang and Ms. Su returned to their respective families. Each family received 15 kilograms of wild boar meat, along with a few other items. The quantity was quite substantial. Having developed a strong bond and cooperation, the first section of the family in NIS. Yen decided to present Ms. Yan's family with 10 kilograms of the meat as a gift, as they maintained a good relationship and collaborated on various business ventures. After a brief discussion, Xiao Xian decided to share some of the wild boar meat with Manager Qin and Ding Erju from Zhang village. Later, she took a moment to scoop some shrimp from the pond after inspecting the fields at Zhang village. Xiao Xian had no inclination to offer any gifts to the Qiao family. Likewise, Officer Qiao had no desire to receive any. Since Yang Xiaoni had severed ties with Yang Liang, she felt no obligation to bring any presents for the new year. Her focus was on having Shao Sanlang accompany her to visit her parents' tomb and pay respects. Someone happened to discover that the first section of the family had given Ms. Yen additional wild boar meat. This news left her feeling bitter and resentful. Attempting to embarrass Ms. Yan, she put on a fake smile and spoke about it openly. Ms. Yan was taken aback by the sudden revelation. Ms. Niu, equally surprised, inquired, "Ms. Yan, is your second sister-in-law telling the truth?" Ms. Yan, while inwardly sneering, openly admitted, "Yes, it's true. Elder aunt mentioned that my parents should also have a taste of it." "Fourth sister-in-law, you certainly have your admirers, don't you?" Ms. Zhang sneered. "Even our mother doesn't receive such honors." Ms. Yan responded quietly but firmly, "I'm not certain about that, but I often present Elder Aunt and her family with tofu, yubas and dried tofu. It seems that Elder Aunt feels the need to reciprocate." Ms. Zhang's words trailed off as Ms. Niu, who was on the verge of anger, fell silent. Indeed, Shao Xiling often brought home tofu and yuba from work, much to Ms. Niu's delight. However, Shao Xiling consistently emphasized that his in-laws insisted on sharing some with the first section of the family and some with the third section of the family. While Ms. Niu disliked the idea of sharing, she couldn't covertly claim them for herself when the Yin family emphasized the first section's entitlement. Ultimately, when she already received her share, Ms. Niu decided to let go of her argument. So when the Yin family received wild boar meat from the first section of the family and requested her daughter-in-law to bring it over, what else could she say? Could she prevent her daughter-in-law from fulfilling her duties? After all, it belonged to her in-laws. Ms. Yen didn't deliberately hide anything from her. Moreover, both of her sons were employed at the Yen family's workshop. While anger brewed within Ms. Niu, she glared at Ms.Zhang and retorted, "Focus on your own meal. You keep causing trouble without knowing the full story. What are you trying to achieve?" Chapter 848. Ms. Zhang's plan uttered by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem. Ms. Zhang trembled with anger, her face flushed. Yet, she lowered her head and refrained from uttering a word. Still, her anger burned within her as she cursed Ms. Yen for being sneaky and her mother-in-law for being foolish enough to trust Ms. Yen's flattering words so easily. In her view, Ms. Yen constantly flattered the first section of the family, which resulted in them showering her with treats. However, they never extended such favors to her, making her feel utterly unfairly treated. Ms. Zhang seethed with anger. With the new year approaching and the first section of the family already distributing gifts to the in-laws, she wondered what her mother-in-law's plan was. Reluctant to ask directly, she privately vented her frustrations to her husband. Shao Erlang held disdain for the Zhang family, feeling repulsed by them. Nevertheless, he acknowledged Ms. Zhang's valid point. They should present gifts to their own family during the new year. Otherwise, it would be seen as mistreatment of the daughter-in-law, causing her great humiliation. Shao Erlang mustered the courage to propose the idea to Ms. Niu. However, before he could complete his suggestion, Ms. Niu snapped, "She instructed you to ask me, didn't she? What is she thinking? Gifts for the new year? Absolutely not. Tell her to leave. It's out of the question. Tell her she can either live honestly or leave this family." Shao Erlang panicked, attempting to defend Ms. Zhang, but even his own words sounded unreasonable to his ears. Ultimately, he was scolded by his mother, failing to protect his wife. Ms. Zhang cried, overcome by a mix of sadness and anger. Weren't they supposed to forgive her for what had happened? It was all a lie. No one had forgotten that incident or truly forgiven her. She could sense that her husband still harbored resentment against her whenever the incident was brought up. But it wasn't her fault. Not at all. They were at fault too. Ms. Zhang no longer dared to mention the gifts to her mother, which filled her with guilt. However, Ms. Niu kept her away from anything valuable, and she couldn't even sneak anything out. Out of pity, Shao Erlang managed to give her some extra money. But it was so little, merely 3 qian, barely enough for anything. While Shao Erlang earned a decent income each month, Ms. Niu never shared any money with her. The thought of that irritated Ms. Zhang even more. She believed that since her husband earned the money, she deserved to receive 1/3 of his earnings. Wasn't that how it worked with the first section of the family? They put half of what they earned into shared savings and kept the other half. Frustrated and enraged, she conceived an idea when she overheard Ms. Niu discussing Shao Miling's upcoming marriage. It was said that Shao Miling's fiancé would visit in a few days. Ms. Zhang contemplated causing some trouble. She had done it before and was already disliked. If her plan failed, she would be doomed. Ms. Niu would never forgive her again. And that wretched Ms. Yen would only add fuel to the fire. Yet, every time she saw Ms. Niu, Ms. Yen, and the first section of the family, Ms. Zhang couldn't control her anger. Her heart burned with fiery hatred. It was a wretched and miserable feeling. She couldn't sleep, tormented day and night. After contemplating for a while and refining her plan repeatedly, Ms. Zhang finally decided to set her scheme in motion. She found her excuses and explanations prepared, ready to ignite the trouble she had in mind. Chapter 849, Not Deserving Utted by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem on that day, Ms.Zhang intercepted Shao Miling when she was in a good mood and casually mentioned her fiancé's upcoming visit before the new year. Shao Miling blushed upon hearing Yuezheng's name. Ms.Zhang sneered inwardly but sighed dramatically. I've heard about the Yu family, such a pity. Shao Miling grew slightly furious, staring at Ms.Zhang. What do you mean? Ms.Zhang responded, it's quite obvious. Shao Yunduan has become a provincial champion, soon to become an advanced scholar and an official. His father-in-law already holds a government position. He's destined for a promising future. You're his cousin but you come from a different background. Now your two brothers are making money, and your life is going to improve. However, you got engaged too early. If you had started seeking a suitor now, you might have had many suitors vying for your attention. Look at your elder aunt. She's so clever that she hasn't even engaged Tao Tao yet. She wants to wait until Shao Yunduan becomes an advanced scholar and find her a suitor, perhaps someone from a wealthy family. She's quite calculating, isn't she? But she's Tao Tao's mother after all. It's understandable that she's looking out for Tao Tao's best interests. However, you're also a daughter of the Shao family, and she does nothing to help you. She even allows your mother to get you engaged so early because she has her own motives, maybe even something sinister, I believe. Shao Miling bit her lip, growing pale, suddenly overwhelmed by jealousy. She had never been fond of Tao Tao, yet she was going to marry someone of nobility because of her brother. Perhaps she would become the wife of a young master, leading a carefree life. But what about her? She was marrying into an ordinary farmer's family. She would have to work for the household and labor in the fields. Despite her hard work, she would only receive meager income for the rest of her life. Why, her second sister-in-law had a point. She deserved a better family. Her cousin would become an official next year, while she would be the cousin of an official coming from such different circumstances. How could an ordinary farmer's family be sufficient for her? She had to admit that she wasn't as exceptional as Tao Tao, but couldn't she at least marry into a wealthy landlord's family? Shao Miling sneered, why didn't you say this earlier, second sister-in-law? What's the point of mentioning it now? They were already engaged. Shao Miling felt even more miserable. Zhang let out a slight sneer. She continued, Miling, it's never too late. You're not married yet, right? You can even break off the engagement. The Yu family doesn't deserve you. You have to think about it and avoid ruining yourself. Shao Miling hesitated. Breaking off an engagement could tarnish a girl's reputation, and she was well aware of that. Zhang seemed to have sensed her concerns and wore a knowing smile. Once Shao Yunduan becomes an official, you'll become the cousin of an official with a respectable family background. You'll stand out from other girls whose engagements are broken. When that time comes, no one will blame you for this stain. They'll flock to your door, begging for the chance to court you. Shao Miling's spirits were lifted upon hearing this. Yes, she would indeed be different from other girls whose engagements were broken. The Yu family didn't deserve her, and she was determined to break off the engagement with them. Only foolish people would reject such a well-thought-out plan. She refused to lead a life filled with humiliation and poverty. Chapter 850, Regretful Utted by Bexenville. Xiaomicronem translator. Henyi translations. More importantly, she refused to live in the shadow of Shao Tao Tao for the rest of her life. She might not have the advantage of having an official brother like Shao Tao Tao, which was beyond her control. However, she couldn't accept being significantly inferior to Shao Tao Tao. Couldn't she at least enjoy the leftovers from Shao Tao Tao's rich meat soup? She simply couldn't settle for rough food when she had the chance for something better. Seeing Shao Miling's apparent interest, Ms.Zhang felt a sense of satisfaction. She continued to flatter Shao Miling, who slowly began to believe that she truly deserved someone better. However, Ms.Zhang soon urged Shao Miling to keep their conversation a secret. You know, I've made some foolish mistakes in the past and my mother-in-law despises me. If she finds out that I shared this solution with you, she would reject it no matter what. It wouldn't be in your best interest, would it? Shao Miling instantly gave Ms. Zhang a disdainful look upon hearing her confession. She snorted. Of course not. I want nothing to do with you. Being associated with Ms. Zhang would only bring her misfortune. Ms. Zhang felt a surge of annoyance, but she quickly forced an embarrassed smile. You're right, sister. That's how it should be. I understand. Ms. Zhang sneered inwardly. The Yu family would certainly not break off the engagement. Only fools did that. She eagerly anticipated the unfolding drama. If they didn't allow her to live a peaceful life, she wouldn't let them have one either. As expected, Shao Miling went to Ms.Mi and tearfully announced that she no longer wanted to marry into the Yu family. She cried and vented her grievances. Then Shao Miling revealed to Ms.Mi what she had learned from Ms.Zhang, leaving Ms.Mi filled with regret and hesitation. If only she had known that Shao Yunduan would become the provincial champion, she wouldn't have rushed to find a suitor for Shao Miling so soon. Once Shao Yunduan achieved the title of advanced scholar and obtained an official position, there would surely be numerous better families for them to consider. Nyo felt a deep sense of regret as these thoughts consumed her. She began to question whether the Yu family was truly suitable for them. She also expressed her grievances toward the first section of the family. The first section of the family should have known about Shao Yunduan's talent and potential to become a recommended candidate. Yet Miss Fong remained silent. How terrible. And as for their elder brother, all he did was talk without taking any action. He failed to provide them with any updates or information, nearly jeopardizing Miling's future. Nis. Nyo pondered over the situation repeatedly, feeling confused and troubled. Eventually she sought out her second uncle and asked for his advice. Second uncle blamed her, stating that the engagement had already been arranged and the wedding was scheduled to take place shortly after the new year, or at the latest by the end of the following year. Breaking off the engagement so easily would tarnish their daughter's reputation. However, second uncle fell silent after hearing Ms. Nyo's analysis. After some contemplation he responded, "Breaking off the engagement doesn't seem like an easy task. The Yu family is eager to become our in-laws, and they are unlikely to agree to it." Ms. Nyo grew increasingly frustrated. "Yu Xiaomiao is no longer worthy of being our daughter's spouse. It shouldn't be up to them whether they want to continue or not. We can offer them some money to end the engagement." Although typically frugal with money, Ms. Nyo believed that securing a better marital prospect for her daughter was worth the expense. Convinced, second uncle agreed, saying, "All right then, find a trustworthy person who can negotiate with the Yu family regarding the cancellation of the engagement. Just state that the bride and groom's horoscopes do not align, and it is best to call it off." "That sounds reasonable. And what about the money?" Second uncle hesitated when it came to reimbursing the money they had received. "How about 5 liang? Or perhaps 10? No, 8 liang should suffice." Chapter 851, The Yu Family's Fury Uttered by Bexenville. CM 8 liang was already a significant amount for them. Many families struggled to save even 8 liang within a year. Ms. Nyo nodded in agreement. It would be wise for them to act sooner rather than later. The next day Ms. Nyo hurriedly set out to find a matchmaker. Ms.Zhang observed her actions and had a vague understanding of her intentions. She silently sneered. The matchmaker had already profited from Ms. Nyo and decided to accompany her on the visit, although she found the entire situation ridiculous. As expected, the Yu family reacted with anger. "What are they talking about? Are they joking with us? We've exchanged birth dates and everything matches. They simply don't think we're good enough for them. We won't tolerate being bullied like this. There's no way we're breaking off the engagement. Or I can share this story with others and gauge their opinions." "Absolutely. It's non-negotiable." The Yu family was delighted to learn that Shao Yunduan had become a provincial champion. Although Shao Miling was not Shao Yunduan's sister, she was his cousin after all. If they encountered any difficulties and sought his help, he would never turn them down. Moreover, the martial alliance would greatly benefit their family's reputation. The Yen family also had a prosperous workshop. By establishing a martial connection between the two families, the Yu family might even secure employment at the Yen family's workshop. Earning 1 or 2 liang per month for easy work. What a fantastic opportunity. Additionally, the Shao family had established a school in Shaoding village, and their children could attend classes there without paying tuition fees. These were all advantages of the martial alliance. Only foolish individuals would forfeit such an opportunity. In a surprising turn of events, the Shao family decided to call off the engagement, seemingly due to a sudden lack of confidence. But the Yu family was determined not to let that happen. It was an incredibly humiliating situation. The matchmaker, recognizing the unreasonableness of the Yu family, quietly slipped away instead of engaging in an argument. Blamed and scolded by the Yu family, the matchmaker felt irritated. When passing on the message to Ms. Nyo, she added some inflammatory remarks, further fueling the fire. Ms. Nyo was also seething with anger. She slammed her hand on the table and cursed, "What a foolish family. Unreasonable people. We will never marry Miling into their household. She would only suffer. We refuse to proceed." Ms. Nyo appeared to have found a justifiable excuse to continue with her decision. Taking matters into her own hands, she personally went to the Yu family. Ms.Mi hurled vulgar words at them. Even when she offered to repay them with 10 liang, they engaged in a heated argument that eventually led to a complete dissolution of the engagement. The Yu family was the aggrieved party, but they feared that if Ms.Mi sought help from the esteemed Shao, they would be powerless to intervene. To gain sympathy and support, they shared their ordeal with others. The Shao family's arrogance knew no bounds. Such bullying was unprecedented in their eyes. After they had already exchanged birth dates, they suddenly decided to call off the engagement? The news of this development quickly spread throughout Shaoding village, reaching every household. Ms. Fang expressed her disbelief, cursing, "What has gotten into these two? How could they act so unethically? They don't seem to care about the reputation of either the Yu family or their own daughter." Qiao Xian let out a sigh, sharing the sentiment. No respectable family would be willing to establish a marital connection with them now, given their reputation for snobbishness. Even if there were wealthy families interested in marrying Shao Miling, she might end up as a concubine or face bullying after the marriage, considering the circumstances. Chapter 852, Saving People uttered by Grownup. CM Translator. Henyi translations. Indeed, the intricacies of a marriage are often invisible to those outside of it. Only the couple themselves truly understand what goes on within their relationship. Each person must live their own life, making choices that are best for them. In light of these events, Miss Fang's concern for Tao Tao grew. Qiao Xian reassured her with a smile. "Don't worry, Mom. We come from different sections of the family. If anyone assumes we are the same, we don't need to consider such a suitor. Trust me, Tao Tao will surely marry a good man." Miss Fang found some solace in these words. However, Ms.Mi did not anticipate that the Yu family would spread the news, causing her immense anger. She vented her frustration through vehement curses at home. Shao Miling was consumed by anger, constantly shedding tears within the confines of her home. Ms.Mi and second uncle sought help from Miss Fang and elder uncle. "Brother, sister-in-law, you must help us." Ms.Mi's tearful plea only fueled Miss Fang's fury. "What right do you have to cry? This is all your own fault. If you didn't want to go through with the marriage, you shouldn't have arranged it in the first place. No one forced you into this. You exchanged birth dates and even set a wedding date. And now you break it off? It's highly unethical. The Yu family is a good family that has been humiliated. Of course they are upset. Wouldn't you be upset in their position? Elle didn't want to. But it's all your fault." Ms.Mi snapped at Miss Fang. "If you had informed us that Yunduan would achieve such success, we wouldn't have arranged a marriage for Miling. But you purposely concealed the truth, and you don't even want Tao Tao to find a suitor. You must have done that intentionally." "You." Miss Fang was infuriated by these accusations. Whether Yunduan would become a recommended man was uncertain for everyone. "What nonsense are you spouting? It's utterly ridiculous. And I haven't found a suitor for Tao Tao because I don't think she should get married right now. How is that even relevant? Any more nonsense like this and he'll slap it right across your face." Ms.Mi's eyes widened, clearly unconvinced, but she chose not to engage in further argument. Times had changed. After Shao Yunduan became the provincial champion, the second branch of the family was no longer as confrontational as before. They might still be bothersome but not as forceful. However, second uncle chimed in. "Elder sister-in-law, let it go. It's already over. But you must help Miling or her life will be ruined." "Yes, that's exactly what one mean. The Yu family is nothing but bullies. They're spreading these stories just to tarnish Miling's reputation. They were never a suitable match anyway." "Absolutely true." Seeing the couple agree with each other in a reasonable manner, Miss Fang was too exhausted to make any further complaints. The room fell into a heavy silence. Even eldest uncle, who had always held his brothers in high regard, was visibly flushed with anger. Clearly the blame rested with the second branch of the family. Miss Fang regarded them with disdain. "So, your daughter is the only one with a reputation to protect? What about their son? You exchanged birth dates and the wedding date was about to be finalized. And now you want to break off the engagement? How can that be considered reasonable?" Furthermore, they seemed to be expecting Shao Yunduan to come to their defense, as if he held some influence. Miss Fang retorted, "You initiated the engagement, so it's your responsibility. You have to resolve the matter with the Yu family yourselves. We can't be of any assistance. And neither can Yunduan. What do you expect from him? To use his position to bully the weak? He would never engage in such unethical behavior." Chapter 853, Unethical uttered by Grownup. CM eldest uncle felt a sense of pity for Shao Miling, unaware that Ms. Zhang had influenced her with the idea. He had intended to interject, but halted upon hearing Ms. Fang's words. It was clear that this couple had come to their doorstep not seeking the help of ordinary people like him and Ms. Fang, but rather aiming for Yunduan's assistance. As he contemplated this, eldest uncle grew increasingly uneasy, realizing that they were trying to manipulate Yunduan into using his limited authority to retaliate against the other family. This deeply troubled him. Such behavior was unquestionably unethical. That's not what we mean. Second uncle and Ms.Mi didn't dare to admit it. This marriage isn't a good match and we have every right to call it off. We even offered to pay them back 10 liang, but they still refused to let go. Now the whole situation has become public, and Miling will suffer greatly if she marries into that family. Elder brother, elder sister-in-law, you've seen Miling grow up. You can't just abandon her like this, can you? Miss Fang sneered. But you are the ones who created this mess. It's utterly unreasonable to expect us to take over and clean it up. Elder uncle carefully pondered the situation before speaking up. Miss Fang, let's calm ourselves down. There's no use complaining when things have already reached this point. We need to come up with a solution to prevent Miling's life from being ruined. True, elder brother is right. Nio and second uncle nodded in agreement. Miss Fang sneered inwardly, convinced that Miling's life was already in ruins. If only Miling had the capacity to comprehend it, she would have despised her parents for their actions. Miss Fang chimed in, what if Miss Chao and I accompany you to the Yu family and help you reconcile, so that the two families can reunite? No, that wouldn't work. Why not? Miling will be subjected to bullying in such a situation. Then let the Yu family make a promise. Yunduan should be able to help you. We can all live in peace, and if anyone bullies Miling and the news reaches us, we won't forgive them for it. Elder uncle's eyes lit up and he added, I think it's a good idea. Whenever you have the opportunity, ask Miling how she feels about it. We will seek justice for any girls who are bullied within our family, of course. If Miling faces any mistreatment, Yunduan can step in. What do you think, brother and sister-in-law? I believe it's a reasonable solution. The Yu family isn't foolish enough to intentionally harm Miling. Ms.Mi and second uncle exchanged a bewildered glance with each other. This wasn't what they had intended. They had wanted to break off the engagement. However, Miss Fang had already spoken resolutely, and elder uncle had agreed. Shao Yunduan would likely heed his parents' advice as well. Ms.Mi and second uncle gritted their teeth in anger, their words failing them. Elder brother and elder sister-in-law are so heartless. They must have deliberately orchestrated this. They don't want a bright future for Miling. This is all your fault. Why did you rush into making a decision about Miling's engagement? Damn you. Miling is no longer a child. She's old enough to have suitors. I had no idea that Yunduan would become a provincial champion or hold an official position. If I had known, one would have called off the engagement. It's all because of elder sister-in-law concealing everything from us. Chapter 854. Braver uttered by Bexenville. Ms.Mi and second uncle sighed repeatedly, feeling distressed and helpless. Shao Miling, on the other hand, was seething with anger and disappointment upon hearing the outcome. She cried incessantly and threw tantrums, declaring that she would rather die than marry into the Yu family. She couldn't bear to see Xiao Taotao living a better life than her. Nio and second uncle were somewhat swayed by their daughter's intense reaction. Their already negative opinion of the marriage worsened as they witnessed her emotional turmoil. But if the first section of the family refused to offer any assistance, what options did they have? The couple frowned, constantly mulling over the dire situation. Meanwhile, Ms.Zhang couldn't help but sneer inwardly, reveling in the chaos that had befallen the family, thanks to her cunning manipulation. Feeling a surge of arrogance, she concluded that her mother-in-law's family was utterly foolish, oblivious to being deceived. Encouraged by her perceived superiority, Ms. Zhang grew bolder and conceived another idea. The Yu family doesn't want to break off the engagement because they see our family as promising, hoping to gain benefits from us. But you are fifth cousin's cousin and Taotao is his real sister. If he could marry Taotao, I believe the Yu family would gladly accept. What are you implying? Do you think I'm inferior to Taotao? Shao Miling snapped. Ms. Zhang said, absolutely not. You've misunderstood me. One believe you are far superior to Taotao. What I meant was that the Yu family would see marrying Taotao as a more advantageous arrangement for them, as they could benefit more from it. Shao Miling snorted, clearly displeased with the situation. However, she reluctantly admitted that Ms. Zhang's assessment had some truth to it. But don't mock us any further. Elder Aunt would never allow Cao Cao to marry into the Yu family. They aren't that kind-hearted. They would never allow Cao Cao to replace her as the bride. She had never even entertained the thought. A sinister smile crept across Ms. Zhang's face as she sneered, but what if that man from the Yu family forces something upon Cao Cao, and Cao Cao has no choice but to marry him? Shao Meiling was taken aback, her eyes widening with curiosity. Tell me more. Ms. Zhang spoke in a mysterious tone. Yu Xiaomiao is coming here to bring us gifts, right? Let's gather the first section of the family and the third section of the family for a dinner. And when they have some drinks? Shao Meiling was surprised, a newfound understanding dawning upon her. I see. Enlighten me further. That seemed like a viable solution. Since the first section of the family had refused to help them and had effectively ruined her life, Shao Meiling felt no remorse towards them. She warned Ms. Zhang, never speak a word about this to anyone ever. Shao Meiling understood that it was not an honorable plan to be proud of, and it should remain a secret. Ms. Zhang agreed, knowing that discretion was crucial. Shao Meiling approached Ms. Niu with a sense of satisfaction, her confidence bolstered. Ms. Niu was taken aback upon hearing Shao Meiling's idea. But as she contemplated the situation, she realized something profound. It was a brilliant idea. Wasn't it too harsh on Cao Cao? Well, Miss Fang had been cruel to them first, and they were merely reciprocating. The first section of the family had started it, and now the second section of the family would return the favor. Since Miss Fang had believed that the Yu family was a suitable match, why not have Cao Cao marry into the Yu family? It would be a perfect fit, wouldn't it? Ms. Niu pondered over the idea, considering the best course of action. They needed a well-thought-out plan to ensure they wouldn't be caught by the first section of the family. Every detail had to be carefully executed, leaving no traces behind. Furthermore, they needed to establish a cooperative relationship with the Yu family, ensuring that Yu Xiaomiao would be on board with their plan. Ms. Niu had no doubts about the outcome. The Yu family would not be foolish enough to reject a marriage proposal for Shao Yunduan's younger sister. Chapter 855. The Invitation uttered by Bexenville. CM The first section of the family had expected the second section of the family to continue making a fuss about the situation, but to their surprise, it abruptly stopped. They let out a collective sigh of relief, grateful for the respite. Miss Fang voiced her opinion. I'll think that they must have realized that it is an unreasonable thing and we want help them. Indeed, it seemed that the second section of the family had come to the same conclusion. Ms. Niu and second uncle approached the first section of the family once again, wearing guilty expressions and suggesting that they could proceed with marrying Shao Meiling off to the Yu family instead. Recognizing that they were all part of the same family, the first section of the family agreed readily, promising to support them if the Yu family were to mistreat Shao Meiling. Feeling reassured, the second section of the family then mentioned that Yu Xiaomiao would deliver the presents in 3 days and invited the entire family to join them for dinner. The purpose was to showcase the unity within the family and to instill some fear in the Yu family, preventing them from seeking revenge. Both Miss Fang and eldest uncle agreed wholeheartedly. With that, Ms. Niu and second uncle left with happiness in their hearts. Yang Xiaoni couldn't help but wear a smile as she addressed Xiao Xian. Did I misunderstand? Are second aunt-in-law and second uncle inviting the entire family for dinner? I thought it would only be our parents, fifth sister-in-law and fifth brother. Xiao Xian chuckled, acknowledging that her third sister-in-law had a point. The second section of the family wasn't known for their generosity, so it was unexpected for them to invite the entire family instead of just the key members. Considering the first section of the family had a large number of people including children, it would certainly be a bustling affair. Xiao Xian jokingly remarked, maybe second aunt-in-law and second uncle are feeling quite guilty and want as many of us as possible to support them when facing the Yu family. The idea sounded plausible to both of them. Yang Xiaoni sighed and nodded in agreement, saying, indeed, Meiling is their daughter and they want to ensure her future happiness. For the sake of their daughter's happiness, attending one dinner was a small price to pay. If it weren't for the intervention of someone from the Yu family approaching Ms. Fang and Shao Yunduan, the first section of the family would have held on to their belief all along. Meanwhile, at the Yu family residence, Ms. Niu made a secret visit to her future in-laws and shared her plan. Mrs. Yu was persuaded and agreed to the arrangement. As long as they executed the plan effectively, it was crucial for Yu Xiaomiao to cooperate. He didn't need to know the details and he wouldn't face any blame. They were well aware of the advantages that came with marrying the sister of an official. Nobody in the village would dare offend them, and the official would always prioritize the well-being of his sister. While the Yu family wasn't inherently greedy, they wouldn't pass up on such an opportunity for financial gain. Upon receiving the Yu family's assurance, Ms.Mi felt elated. It was an irresistible temptation that no one could refuse. Officials needed to maintain strong connections with other influential families. After Tao Tao's marriage, Shao Yunduan would no longer have a sister, and he would need to forge a marital alliance with another family. Miling was the most suitable candidate for him to consider. Chapter 856. Disorganization uttered by Bexenville. Maybe Miling could marry into an official's family and become the wife of an official. This idea further fueled Ms.Mi's determination. She was determined to make it happen no matter what. However, when Mrs. Yu shared the plan with her husband and Yu Xiaomiao, they exchanged a glance and immediately dismissed the idea. You even criticized Mrs. Yu for entertaining such a ridiculous notion. Ms.Mi's idea is preposterous. Why are you even considering it? Provincial Champion Shao is a highly intelligent individual who can see through such schemes. Regardless of whether the plan succeeds or not, we would antagonize many people. The second section of the family is his own family and he wouldn't target them. But we are outsiders. Have you thought about the consequences? Mrs. Yu remained unconvinced. But Shao Tao will be our daughter-in-law and we are family as well. The first section of the family wouldn't harm their own daughter. We're not greedy people, we just want to live a decent life, that's all. Yu Xiaomiao sneered. Mom, he is the provincial champion and possesses various means to deal with us. If they seek revenge by ruining our siblings, do you have any control over that? The Yu family could never bear such consequences. Mrs. Yes' expression changed. No, it's impossible. We will be relatives by that time and they would never stoop so low. Of course they would. Have you not heard what happened to the Zhao family? Mrs. Yu fell silent, her face turning pale. Indeed, she was well aware of the circumstances surrounding the Zhao family. Not everyone was oblivious to the truth. Young Master Zhao had some inkling about the first section of the Shao family's daughter-in-law, and soon after, they mysteriously vanished. People began to connect the dots and realized that there must have been some connection. The downfall of the Zhao family was evident. They deserved punishment, but the extent of the retribution seemed excessive. No one dared to question the Shao family's actions. No one dared to voice their approval either. Mrs. Yu remained stubborn, speaking through gritted teeth. But Tao will be our daughter-in-law, and if they dare lay a finger on my son and daughter, I will make sure their daughter learns a lesson. It's only fair as one would be her mother-in-law. Yu Xiaomiao sneered even more, his anger evident in his voice. You're really willing to entertain that thought, Mom? If you retaliate against their daughter, they could take it out on me. They might even divorce us. Provincial Champion Shao is on the path to becoming an official, and even if he doesn't, the Shao family has many influential members who would never allow their sister to be mistreated. Mrs. Yu opened her mouth to respond but found herself at a loss for words. It was true, in reality she was merely playing with empty threats. She lacked the courage to actually confront anyone. Mr. Yes' glare intensified. Now you realize how wrong you were, don't you? How could you agree to such a plan? I never knew you could be like this. Mrs. Yu felt her heart shatter but found herself unable to respond. She murmured, but I already made a promise to Ms.Mi. Father and son continued to glare at her, their disappointment evident. She gathered her courage and straightened her back. Why are you glaring at me like that? I'm doing this for Xiaomiao and for the sake of our family. Mr. Yu furrowed his brow, contemplating that once Xiaomiao got married, they should live separately. The two sons should reside in different places. They would live with their eldest son, whose wife would be in charge. Mrs. Yu would have no authority and would simply take care of her grandson and do some household chores. That would be her role. She couldn't be in a position of authority or it would lead to trouble. Yu Xiaomiao interjected, that's your problem. I'm going to the Shaoding village to inform the first section of the family about this. Chapter 857. Truth uttered by Bexenville. See him what? No way. But that's how it should be. They'll be so humiliated. You shouted in anger. You talk about humiliation? Xiaomiao is right. We should inform Provincial Champion Shao about this. It's their family matter and we shouldn't interfere. We can break off the engagement and demand compensation of no less than 10 liang. Not a penny less. They didn't like the way things had turned out, but it was pointless to continue. They could gain a new daughter-in-law with the compensation. However, Yu Xiaomiao had his own plan. Well, see, Mr. Yu understood his child. He had his own ideas, so he didn't press the matter further. Besides, he didn't want to discuss it any longer. His son could do as he pleased as long as he didn't blame his parents for it. It was good that he wasn't as confused as his mother, so he didn't go overboard. As evening fell, Yu Xiaomiao went to the first section of the Shao family. Recognizing him, Miss Fang put on a friendly expression and invited him inside. Miss Fang felt a twinge of guilt about the humiliation caused by the second section of the family. Yu Xiaomiao mentioned that he had a few private words to speak with provincial champion Shao, which should remain between them. Miss Fang was puzzled, but she still went to ask Shao Yunduan. Shao Yunduan invited Yu Xiaomiao to join him in the study, where Qiao Xian was already present. As Miss Fang was about to leave, Yu Xiaomiao smiled at her and gestured for her to stay. It was an awkward and embarrassing situation, and Yu Xiaomiao stumbled over the story. Miss Fang's anger flared up as she snapped, "How dare she? Oh, how dare she? She intends to frame Tao Tao. She's insane. I'll make sure she pays for this." Qiao Xian intervened, "Mom, don't get worked up. She won't succeed. She should be the one feeling angry, not us." "I knew it. How could she suddenly be so generous and invite us all to dinner? She wants to carry out her plan when there are many people present." Qiao Xian began to piece it all together. It had been confusing for them as well. No wonder they say that when rules are broken, something is amiss. Yu Xiaomiao soon finished explaining the story. "I apologize for my mother's confusion. My father and I didn't think it was a good idea at all. That's why we decided to inform you about this. Perhaps it's better this way." "I'm sorry?" Miss Fang's gratitude towards Yu Xiaomiao grew. She said, "We understand indebted to you. If not for your revelation, we would have been framed. I apologize and thank you. That's what we should do. All right then. I should be on my way." As it was getting late, Miss Fang and Shao Yunduan escorted Yu Xiaomiao out. Upon returning to the study, Miss Fang was seething with anger, wishing she could confront Ms.Mi right away. "Yunduan, Qiao Xian, what do you think?" Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan exchanged glances, and after a moment Shao Yunduan spoke up, "We have only heard Yu Xiaomiao's account, and we cannot be certain of the truth." Miss Fang was taken aback, her brows furrowing. "I don't believe he is lying. It's just like something your second aunt-in-law would do." Yu Xiaomiao. A story brought back so many memories for her. Qiao Xian explained with a smile, "Mom, my husband means that regardless of our intentions, we shouldn't blindly trust the words of one person. We should investigate and gather more information, or we might easily fall victim to framing." Chapter 858, Waiting Utted by Bexenville. Miss Fang comprehended the message. "I'll understand. You're advising me not to act impulsively." She knew Ms. Nyo's character, but what if someone else was involved? If she blindly believed that person and acted rashly, she could have made a grave mistake. Things were different now. She may have made mistakes in the past, but what if her son was implicated this time? Qiao Xian smiled. "Mom, you're so perceptive. It's just a gentle reminder." Miss Fang sighed, a smile forming on her face. "Then remind me as much as you can. I'll keep them all in mind." Shao Yunduan glanced at Qiao Xian with a tender expression. Having a wife who understood him and stood by his side brought him a happiness he couldn't find elsewhere. After a moment, Miss Fang clenched her teeth. "But I believe this is exactly what your second aunt-in-law would do." "Let's catch her in the act," suggested Shao Yunduan. "Confronting her now wouldn't yield any admission. We have no evidence. She would likely accuse Yu Xiaomiao of harboring resentment over the broken engagement and attempting to frame her. It would only complicate matters further." Miss Fang felt a wave of enlightenment. That's absolutely true. Ms. Nyo's actions were indeed predictable. "All right, then let's catch her in the act. Should we inform Tao Tao about this so she can be prepared?" Shao Yunduan and Qiao Xian exchanged a glance, and Shao Yunduan nodded. "Yes, we should let her know. We'll discuss the plan further tomorrow. But let's keep this information from Dad for now." Shao Yunduan couldn't rely on his father, who often seemed oblivious to such matters. Miss Fang chuckled. "Of course not. He would never believe us." Head Go consoled the second section of the family, fearing they might be wrongly accused. "Ah." Qiao Xian and Shao Yunduan exchanged a bemused look as Miss Fang left the room. Shao Yunduan's expression turned serious as he sighed, massaging his forehead. Things would have been much simpler if he hadn't decided to pursue a career as an official. He now had to consider numerous factors, and it was hard to determine if his family might become the target of some conspiracy. Thankfully, his mother possessed a clear mind. Qiao Xian sighed. Yu Xiaomiao seems like a level-headed person. Shao Meiling is fortunate to marry him, and it's surprising that the second aunt-in-law refuses to believe it. Shao Yunduan smiled. "I'm not sure what makes her so confident." Xiao Xian pondered for a moment and smiled as he asked, "Yu Xiaomiao is quite intriguing. I believe he still wants to marry Miling. What do you think?" Xiao Yunduan nodded, a grin forming on his face. It would be ideal if he marries Xiao Miling. He seems capable of keeping her in check. As cousins from the second and first sections of the family, Xiao Miling was known for her strong-willed and outspoken nature. Once she was married, it would be challenging to rein her in. If someone were to try and manipulate her, she might even become a force to be reckoned with. If her husband possessed the ability to manage her and handle situations wisely, it would make things much smoother. Otherwise, they could face considerable trouble in the future. When that time came, it might not be possible for the first section of the family to remain uninvolved. Xiao Yunduan was delighted to assist Xiao Miling in marrying into the Yu family, rather than allowing her to choose an uncertain partner. The second aunt-in-law opposed this potential son-in-law, hoping that Cao Cao would take over instead. However, Xiao Yunduan had no intention of allowing that to happen. He wanted to show her the consequences of her actions, to make her understand the meaning of reaping what you sow. They engaged in a lengthy discussion about the plan before finally retiring for the night. Chapter 859, Waiting Utted by Bexenville. The anticipated day arrived when Yu Xiaomiao came to present the gift. To ensure the success of their plan, the second section of the family spared no expense. They had 2 plump chickens slaughtered, braised 2 fish, and procured a variety of meat. They even had Xiao Xiling bring tofu, yubas, and dried tofu from the Yan family the day before. Ms. Yan, unaware of the scheme, interpreted her mother-in-law's generous gesture of inviting the first and third sections of the family for dinner as a sign that they had reconsidered and accepted the marriage. Thus, she actively offered her assistance. Only Ms.Zhang's eyes gleamed with excitement, as if her heart was leaping with anticipation. She couldn't wait to witness the spectacle unfold. Yu Xiaomiao arrived at 10 in the morning, and Ms. Niu, along with second uncle who still believed he was on their side, greeted him joyfully. Second uncle pulled him aside, speaking in a hushed and smiling voice. "You need to pretend to be drunk but not actually drunk. They'll have the brothers guide you to the wing room. Once the girl is there, you know what to do. Just remember not to go overboard." It was all part of the show, not a genuine move. Cao Cao would be defenseless if she ended up in the same room as Yu Xiaomiao. Second uncle certainly didn't want Yu Xiaomiao to make any real advances towards Cao Cao under his roof. It wouldn't bode well for his reputation. Yu Xiaomiao chuckled inwardly, then turned to his future father-in-law, nodding earnestly. But he couldn't help but wonder who would be accompanying him in the room. Ms. Niu instructed her 2 daughters-in-law to prepare 2 tables filled with delicious food and gathered the entire family together. Yang Xiaoni openly praised Ms. Niu for her generosity, which made Ms. Niu feel uneasy. Generous? She was coerced into this. She had no desire to do any of it. Xiao Lulang was absent. Third uncle claimed he was too busy studying and couldn't join for lunch. Niu and second uncle had invited so many people with the intention of creating chaos, making it easier to execute their plan. They also wanted witnesses to avoid any potential denials. Xiao Lulang's absence didn't concern them. Eldest uncle expressed great concern for Xiao Lulang, saying emotionally, "Lulang is working so hard now. Please take care of him and make sure he doesn't overexert himself." Ms.Mi sighed, feeling worried. She refrained from boasting about her son as she had done before. Third uncle beamed with pride. "Lulang must have thought it through. I'm confident he'll make it next year. He's ambitious and he promises us a future filled with happiness as he pursues his path to becoming an official." The table was set with various dishes, and Xiao Xiaoji, Cao Cao, and Ms.Zhang enjoyed their meal in the kitchen with Xiao Miling, while the rest of the family gathered around the table in the hall. The table was filled with an abundance of dishes, and 2 jars of wine were prepared. Second uncle opened the wine and invited everyone to join in the drinking. Ms. Fang discreetly glanced at Ms. Niu, who was far from stingy when it came to pouring the wine. She encouraged everyone to drink as much as they could. Ms. Fang cursed inwardly. That woman only showed generosity when she had ulterior motives. If given the chance, she would give her a thorough scolding. Yu Xiaomiao appeared to be heavily intoxicated as he reached the halfway mark. His face had turned red, and it was evident that he was truly drunk. Chapter 860, Coldness Utted by Bexenville. Third uncle playfully teased second uncle. "Looks like your son-in-law has a low alcohol tolerance. He's already drunk after just a little wine. People have different drinking capacities. He's drunk so he needs some rest. We can continue celebrating," second uncle replied with a smile. He then turned to Xiao Sanlang and said, Shao Sanlang, help you Xiaomiao to the wing room with Qi for some rest. Shao Sanlang and Qi were unaware of the situation but agreed to assist, helping Yu Xiaomiao up from his seat. Ms. Niu stood up as well. They'll guide you in. Help him. Once Yu Xiaomiao was settled, Shao Sanlang and Qi returned to the hall, and Ms. Niu followed closely behind. She exchanged a few words in the kitchen, not to share any important information, but to provide Xiao Meiling and Ms.Zhang with some subtle cues. Ms. Niu walked briskly, feeling a sense of anticipation. She was eager to witness the unfolding drama. After completing her task, she planned to find an excellent match for her own daughter, making Cao Cao envious for the rest of her life. Xiao Meiling and Ms.Zhang exchanged a knowing glance and couldn't help but feel pleased. Soon they finished their meal. Xiao Meiling mentioned that she had something to discuss privately with Cao Cao. Xiao Xiaoji felt slightly displeased being left alone. However, with Xiao Meiling's impending marriage, the cousins decided to set aside any grievances during this joyous occasion. So Cao Cao followed Xiao Meiling to another location. Cao Cao's heart sank, overcome by a chilling sense of unease. If her mother hadn't given her a warning beforehand, she would have been completely unprepared for this situation. Xiao Meiling glanced at Ms. Zhang as she led Cao Cao to the wing room wearing a smile. Al left my sewing needles and thread inside the room. Can you help me find them? Cao Cao gave her a complex look, a mixture of emotions swirling within her. Deep down, she wished that Xiao Meiling would feel remorse at this final moment. Xiao Meiling sensed the intensity of Cao Cao's gaze, feeling a discomforting sensation. However, she quickly dismissed the feeling. Cao Cao's palms grew clammy with sweat. Once inside the wing room, Xiao Meiling pretended to search for something and asked Cao Cao for assistance. Soon, Ms. Zhang called Xiao Meiling out of the room, and Xiao Meiling instructed Cao Cao to continue searching while she stepped away momentarily. The two women exchanged a conniving grin before parting ways. Xiao Meiling made her way back to the room, pretending to be oblivious to everything that was about to unfold. Meanwhile, Ms. Zhang went to relay the message to Nis. No. Once Ms. Niu received the message, she would know that everything had been set in motion. Inside the wing room, Yu Xiaomiao's task was to embrace Cao Cao, unaware that she was not Xiao Meiling. He wouldn't be held accountable for his actions. Ms. Niu's face lit up with a bright smile upon seeing Ms. Zhang. She turned to Shao Sanlang and said, Sanlang, could you please check on Xiaomiao? I'm feeling a little concerned. Qi had already gone after the food was finished. The first section of the family needed to witness this firsthand. As soon as Shao Sanlang raised his voice, they would all rush in that direction. Shao Sanlang agreed, setting his chopsticks down and leaving the table. Soon a scream echoed through the air. What's happening here? What's going on? What happened to Sanlang? Let's all go and see. Niu hurriedly dashed out of the hall. Miss Qiao, Xiao Yunduan, and Miss Fong, who were privy to the plan, could only shake their heads in disbelief. Niu was certainly driven by her own motivation. Miss Fong sneered. Let's all go and have a look. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.